The PUBG Mobile Campus Championships are up and ready, rearing and ready to go here on Grand Finals Day 1. 3 maps of PUBG Mobile action are lying in front of us here on the first weekend of November. My name's Daniel Rodier. I'm Time to Light. That right there is DK or Draco Killian. I've been doing too many normal sports broadcasts. I've gone by first and last name, and that is DK. Thank you very much for joining us here on a very fine Saturday afternoon, or in his case, somewhat late evening.
Yeah, I mean, it happens, right? The beauty of being in different parts of the world, we're experiencing time in different ways, but either which way, we're not going to be experiencing PUBG in any different way, right? We're going to be looking at all the action unfolding as we are going to be heading into day 1 of our finals right here for the PUBG Mobile Campus Championship full for 2024. And I got to tell you that I'm expecting quite a bit of excitement to come through here. We've been seeing these teams really grind it out, coming through those qualifiers, especially looking at what they did in the semis. It was pretty exciting, and I want to see that being taken to the next level, right? That being taken one step up above from what we've been seeing, not only just in the semifinals, but also what we've been seeing in the previous seasons.
Yeah, previous seasons, even qualifiers before that. A lot of teams have had a fair bit of time to prepare for some of the squads they may be going up against. Now, a couple things to note: we are not playing Vikendi twice across 2 days. We're playing Sanhok today, Vikendi tomorrow. We'll get into all the maps in just a minute. But the other thing I want to mention, these 16 teams are the top 8 from each semifinal. It's not based on points from either semifinal, so a team who placed 10th that got 30 points is not going to be above a team that placed 8th and only got 15. So keep that in mind if you're looking back and like, wait, this team got more points. Doesn't matter. They were in the wrong semifinal for it.
Yeah, and I mean, this is definitely going to be an interesting one. You know, we've seen the teams have quite a bit of an opportunity to get quite acclimated with each other, if that would be the right way to go about it. I mean, but of course, looking what we had coming through from the semis, we had our 2 teams, or 2 different groups of teams playing, duking it out, looking to see who's going to make it up into the finals that we'll have here. So I want to see these squads now starting to rub shoulders against each other, right? Because in previous seasons, sure, we might have seen a few of these teams competing at this point in the competition, but we've got a few new names that have also been able to kind of, you know, squeeze their way through, that were able to grind enough to make it up into the final. So I want to see what the new team's contribution is going to be and how that dynamic could potentially be influencing what we'll be experiencing in the finals itself.
And given the nature of collegiate esports, this is also the same schools, maybe even same team name under the school. You know, Seneca, they have 3 rosters. We saw all 3 of them last week. Only one of them qualified. That was Sting. But not all the time are you going to see the same individually rostered players. I mean, to my count, if I looked back, and I think I did properly, there were only a maximum of 2 players held over per roster from last semester into this semester. I didn't see a single team with 3 of the same names between 2 semesters, which is actually pretty concerning, but also insightful as to how developed some of these back-end rosters can be. I also saw Sting had 1 player change to Pearl, but unfortunately they didn't qualify that time. Unfortunately.
I mean, one thing that it could just be is, you know, the players who might have played in previous seasons, they might have graduated.
Yeah.
Right? So they've moved on to better, greater things. So, you know, there's always that interesting dynamic of new players coming in, some fresh blood entering out onto the battlefield, giving the team a different kind of a dynamic to try and work with, to see what they can manage, how they can, you know, strategize and use it to their advantage. So I think it does put an interesting twist to the dynamic of these teams, seeing how they can actually keep up with the flow of things, you know, as we have individuals graduating, moving on, or just a team essentially staying the same team that we've been seeing before. So yeah, I want to see all that kind of synergistic performances now really start to showcase as we step into the first day of the action.
Yeah, first day of action, and this is split between 2 days. We're not going to see 2 separate lobbies. Instead, it's 2 separate days, 6 maps between these 2 days. And first things first, let's take a look at how this is going to set up for the teams themselves. I'd like to take a look at the teams. We've already seen them in the last 2 weeks. We'll take a look at them today, seeing which rosters made it from each individual lobby. I'll bring up a couple times throughout the early stage of today, probably not tomorrow, of which lobby some teams came from. But I'm really looking forward to see how some flex with opposing teams from the opposite semifinal, because we've seen this last season, the season before as well, where on a couple of occasions it's very easy for teams who are playing up against different rosters with different playstyles to change their own fortunes. A roster that made it just barely through 8th place can very reasonably be top 3 or top 4 should they get the right draw of things. We'll see if that is the case today. But I'm looking forward to some of the chaos that's created between our new 3 maps.
Yeah, I mean, it could be quite interesting to see how this is going to work. But seeing that we're on the topic of interesting, right? Of course, I think it'd be interesting to hear what our viewers' thoughts are as well. So be sure to hit us up on social media. You'll be seeing all those links, all the codes right here on screen, so you can't miss any of them. Whether you're watching us on YouTube or you're catching us on Twitter or Instagram, all the links up there. As you can see, it's Esports PUBG Mobile NA. The same goes for Twitter or X, whichever one you want to call it. We've got the exact same tag right here on YouTube as well. And of course, then there's the Discord server as well, where you can get involved, kind of include yourself in the community, and who knows, we could eventually, maybe at some point, be screaming out your name on screen as well.
Yeah, for all of you who may prefer Twitch over YouTube as well, we are on twitch.tv/playflygg. We used to be on the NA Star League channel, and then the 2 organizations split. So fun thing that happened over the summer for those of you who may not actively be in the North American collegiate esports scene. Ironically, that acronym also spells NACE. But as we get into these teams and get into the more nitty-gritty, let's take a look at the rosters of maybe the individual teams. It would take a very long time to get through all the rosters here, DK. And one of them that I really want to bring up is, again, Seneca College and Sting Esports. We had a couple from last week where the Rich Warriors, even Quantland Polytechnic, stepped up in a big way. But Sting Esports is probably my team to look out for, depending on how early they can kick off on this day.
Yeah, if they can come out of the gate swinging, back in quite a bit of heat, I think there could be quite an interesting play coming through from them. And then I think also another team to keep a very close eye on could potentially be Western.
Yeah.
I think they could also maybe be bringing quite a bit to the foreground here onto the battlefield as well. So I'm going to be, maybe looking towards Western University, potentially even the players representing the Rich Warriors, right? Or, well, as we have them as well, I'm trying to find, there we go, slot number 3. I always struggle with pronouncing that name, right?
Rocket Lamb.
Yes, there we go, Cocket Lamb. Right, because I'd rather wait till I hear you say it before I say it, just to make sure that I don't add letters in that shouldn't be there. But
It's not Coquit Lamb for all of you who are watching.
Yes, you know, just blame it on my English. That's the thing I'll blame it on. But sorry, I think at least from the one perspective or the one lobby, that is going to be to the teams that are going to be keeping a very close eye and looking to see how they're going to be, you know, bringing that kind of momentum, stepping into the finals here. But then, as you've mentioned, you know, those are, again, not the only 2 teams that we have here. We've got a wide variety of teams actually to choose from, and several good names that we have on the board here.
Yeah, notably, there is technically no school that has 2 rosters in here. Yes, I know you see 2 separate Seneca College logos. One of them is from Seneca College Toronto. The other one is from the core Seneca College campus. So technically, there are not any duplicate colleges or universities or whatever post-secondary education acronym you want to add to it with multiple teams in this grand final. But if you want to give credit where credit is due, Seneca has 2 separate campuses here with 2 separate teams fighting for this very large prize pool in the grand finals. Now, we won't crown any champions today, but in around about 27 hours or so, we will be able to give away $15,000 in prize pool. $6,000 to the first place team, 4 to the second, 3 to the third, because we figured at least one number would line up, 1,000 to the 4th place squad, and each of 5th and the 6th get $500 apiece.
Yeah, I mean, that's a nice, decent chunk of change coming through towards these teams, and, you know, it's to reward them for the hard work that they've put on, as well as the exciting gameplay that they've been bringing in on the battlefield as well. So I'm definitely going to be looking to see how the teams are trying to establish themselves here today, right? It's going to be our first 3 of 6 games, the first half, the first day, whichever way you want to try and cover that. That is what we are going to be looking at. And I think today is going to be quite the important day, right? This gives the teams the opportunity to lay that foundational groundwork, right? To establish themselves on the leaderboards, and the more work that they are able of pulling off today, I think the less they have to worry about come tomorrow, because I think especially the teams that have that might at the end of today not have the amount of points that they need or would like want to have. Tomorrow's going to be the opportunity to try and make up for that. And if you want to give yourself a little bit of a little bit of breathing room, right? Get it done today. Get as many points as you can on the board. I know it's easy to say and not that easy to pull off, right? I know, but you know that's the idea. That's the idea. At the end of the day, try and get as many points as you can.
So last week we were talking about the threshold of points needed to qualify. If you got in at 8th place, it was the exact same as getting in at 1st place. We just showed you all those 16 teams. The reason we didn't bring up who placed 1st, who placed 8th in either semifinal, honestly, we don't care. Obviously, we'll bring it up throughout this grand final, but it doesn't matter. If you place 1st, you start with 0 points. If you placed 8th in either semifinal, congratulations, you too start with 0 points. There's no extra advantage of placing higher other than maybe some bragging rights and some confidence. But going into today and tomorrow, we'll be talking about 2 separate thresholds. Number 1, the money, because, I mean, obviously $500 is nice, but you'd like up to $6 grand. And number 2, the PMSL qualifying positions. The top 2 teams from this go into, I believe, the spring 2025 PMSL qualifiers here in North America. So those 2 placements are a much bigger conversation than maybe the $500 you get from 6th place. You can also just talk about, hey, it's nice to win. That $6,000 is pretty sick. So I suppose there's 3 thresholds we can cover.
I would say it checks out, maybe, right? And it's an upgrade, right? Going from 2 thresholds to 3 thresholds, right? It's like you're upping the numbers. It's getting bigger. There's more of them. So yeah, there's several things for these teams to play for. But yeah, I think the big thing that we are going to be looking at today is how comfortable are these teams on the battleground, right? They've had a lot of opportunity to kind of get, to get the hang of things, to, get themselves nice and acclimated to what is going to be happening here today. But it always comes down to the day of, right? You can do all the prepping in the world. If nerves get you, they get you. So hopefully the teams won't be suffering from that today. I want to see the confidence. I want to see the comfort, right? The teams just stepping out there, being in the element. And I mean, we've got a beautiful map rotation as well for these teams to utilize to really come into that being. And it's, of course, the same map rotation that we saw them use over in the qualifiers itself. So, yes. What do you mean? What do you mean like this? We did Vikendi as well. Or is it that? Oh, that's you shivering. That's you shivering. I get it.
Let's take a look at the maps. I think we've got Sandhawk today. Vikendi starts out tomorrow. So if I'm right, and I'm reading our map rotation, I think I am right. Let's take a look at our maps. We will go to Vikendi. Is it Sandhawk tomorrow morning?
Yes, sir.
It is. Oh, no.
You gotta leave the rumble in the jungle to the last day.
I was just shivering. That's
yeah. See, no, I figured that. When I saw the hit going, it's like, oh. Yeah.
Yep. Sandhawk, we start with tomorrow. So
yes.
I was thinking ahead of myself.
It's okay. It's okay. I mean, like, I like Sandhawk as well. It's quite an exciting map to, to play on. So I can understand the excitement. You just want to get to that point. But the sad part is like when we get to Sandhawk, that's the last match. Right? So then it's done. So I think in the meanwhile, we'll just sit here and enjoy everything that these teams are going to be bringing in. Speaking about enjoying it, though, we are getting ready to move over into the action. Of course, we are going to be heading into the glorious, lovely desert called Miramar. So where would you want to see teams potentially dropping down, moving into our first match?
I mean, first, I'm always thinking military base because I'm terrible and love the chaos. That's where I drop when I play Miramar, if I can, just because it's basically a free loot position and you can pick up a car, assuming you run for long enough. But Los Leones is a very reasonable drop spot. We've seen Pachinki as back on Erangel, a big jump up for teams. I think Picado will be something similar here, especially with teams trying to get those early points as you talked about. And as we take a look at our plane path, Impala, Puerto Preso, and Los Leones are all very much in contention.
Yeah, and that is going to be, I think, pretty much the contentious points to look at here today. It is going to be a decent spread. And of course, speaking about the spreads, let's take a look at the map to get an idea as to where that flight path is going. You were talking about, Via Del Mar. We've got Los Leones in there as well. Monte Nuevo, not too far away. We got La Driera. So quite a few interesting places and drop locations for these teams to get themselves situated. Also going to be looking over on towards Puerto Pareso. So I think we're not going to be seeing as many teams necessarily dropping down in towards Los Leones, right? We've not seen that in any of the semi days. Los Leones back in the day used to be quite the contested point on the map. It's now changed up a little bit, as you can see the teams maybe focusing a bit more down towards that coastal line. But as we've seen in previous games as well, right, the big kicker is going to be where that first initial zone is going to be forming.
So first zone, if I'm a guessing man, last week we had a lot of south zones. I'm guessing northwest today, because I'd love to see El Pozo be an impactful part. It would just be, fun for me, because I love the chaos. But I want to talk about where teams are dropping in comparison to where they did last week. Now, each of these teams only played Miramar once. They played it as the last game in each of their semifinals. One of the teams that is a big change is the Rich Warriors. Because of the previous plane last week, or 2 weeks ago, they dropped around the military base in Torre Ahumada. But today, they're just on that north side of Los Leones, and they're moving up, I suppose, towards the graveyard now. But that's a big change in real estate, and it turns out I was wrong. It's another south zone. We can't avoid them.
I mean, if it works, it works. What also works is a little bit of aggression down into Via Del Mar. As you can see already, the players there from, I believe it's Punjab, already getting quite a bit of pressure being applied onto their shoulders as we jump straight into the action here, making our way on through. Now, this is where it gets nice and interesting. Of course, the players here from BT also just trying to get themselves established. They are representing the St. Lawrence College. So, yeah, a nice little bit of a hot drop action coming through. Well, I say hot drop, and well, they're over in Puerto, so I guess it's not so hot, aside from the heat coming out of
it is Miramar.
The sun up above. Yeah, you got to be careful though, right? You got to stay hydrated.
That's one thing you always have to remember. That's one thing I'm going to do between our first and second game, because I totally remembered to grab water. Now, Punjab is already gone. I think that's the first team removed. If I'm reading our map correctly, Punjab already lost all 4 players to Scar over towards Valle del Mar. And Scar didn't lose a single man. So great start, as we'll have our API show up with that score in just a second. But that's the opening. I mean, what, it took less than 3 minutes for a full team wipe here in the grand finals?
Yeah, I mean, PUBG has that tendency to go from 0 to crazy in, in next to nothing. Yeah. You can't really assign any period of time to it, because sometimes it's too quick, fast. Other days it takes a little while longer. But yeah, I mean, no surprise to see that really happening all the way down in towards that southern side of the zone. As we know, Via Del Mar is somewhat of a contested position there, but I think it's a great start, especially looking at a team like the British Columbia Institute of Technology team that we have, right? Coming through the semis, we didn't have a crazy heap of action coming from their end. So I think this sets them up for a good start, especially coming into the first match.
So a couple notes. Punjab last time dropped San Martin, and they went to Valle del Mar this time. Scar last time dropped Impala. They went to Valle del Mar this time. Villains went to Impala, stayed at Impala. Sign to God went up towards the military base in that northern general area. That's where they decided to sprint up around this time. And everybody else is staying in about the same positions-ish. Puerto Preso is still occupied by that BT squad. Not too surprising for them. We saw Rude Dudes occupy it in the second semifinal. They unfortunately are not with us in this grand final. What could have been for the Rude Dudes. What a shame.
Yeah, maybe it was a bit rude. Who knows? Speaking of which, though, we're going to be moving over to the Georgian College here, as we can see 777 making their way on through. Interesting spot for them, also close towards that southern center portion of the current zone itself. Again, just holding on to those outlying regions south of Los Leones. We've seen 2 teams make their way, or make a bit of a play up into that region. So I'm curious to see if anyone's going to maybe get into some hot and heated debate. Speaking of the debates, though, it's going to be Fate all the way from Kwantlen Polytechnic. Just popping a few hits in there as well. Just trying to assert a little bit of their presence as they make their way through, of course, coming through from that western side. But this is where I'm curious as to what their rotation is going to be, right? Are they going to maybe try and full send it up into, well, one of the crazy compounds up ahead of them? Or are they going to opt out and maybe go for... Okay, maybe go for a more of a relaxed, maybe more of a, you know, kind of chilled approach, just maybe holding on to the outskirts as opposed to, you know, getting that full blind send going.
One thing I'd like to see a lot of teams do is very incrementally move in. There's no real reason to rush it, especially if you are Fate, if you're ATN, Arctic, what is that? Arctic Talon. There are a lot of rosters who are already in the zone. They're in pretty decent positions overall. If they very slowly move up, they're going to be in most of the following zones, but they need to make sure they're not caught out of position or individuals aren't caught by different rosters. That's the case here. Jump out for Nervous, trying to take a couple pot shots as he's in a 2v2. That's a Seneca player. That right there is Frostbite losing Demon, and Shelby's just going to have to abandon ship and abandon Demon. They may get caught after. But for the time being, one of those two players is safe.
Well, let's see for how much longer that safety will remain. In the meanwhile, it is going to be Fate also just continuing to try and get themselves situated. So it does seem like they are not going to be full sending it up into any of the crazy compounds. Speaking about crazy though, we are going to be hopping straight over towards South Carolina, upstate. You can see the shots trying to get fired across the way. This is where the ridge lines actually work out quite nicely, right? Teams not necessarily having to fall all the way back into hard cover, just up behind the ridge. But that also allows the rotation to come in, like we can see coming in through from BT here as they're pushing up the ridge, trying to get up close and personal here to the upstate team. But will they find that play? Will they get the angle? So far, Brar and Co definitely look to be backing quite a bit of pressure onto them.
It's going to have to be a little bit of a disengage here for South Carolina Upstate. Great timing for Pika to get inside of the buggy and get away. That nade would have killed him should they not have retreated as soon as they did. But if you're looking at this from BTX's perspective, you're having to over push this while losing a lot of real estate. Great nade from distance catches Brar out. They're down, and that's the timing for the Spartans to jump on this. Good scouting by the buggies. They're going to get in, find the players, get out, allow the players on foot to try and engage. Punjab with one, looking for another if they can find it. But in all this chaos, there's still players on either side, and this is perfect timing for the Spartans. Now completely encircling the BTX roster. They're almost certainly going to go down here. A valiant effort for Punjab to jump into the truck and try and go for the 1-2. But doesn't get it, and that should just be about BTX gone, minus maybe one player on very low HP, I might add.
Well, I mean, that was the case. It's not the case anymore. You got to give it up to the Spartans. They are definitely kicking up a storm here as they're getting ready to rush on in. They want to get that last elim to send yet another team backing. And I gotta say, I don't quite see BT making out of this one in one piece, right? St. Lawrence College, this could be the end of the road. I like the nades though. A very, very defensive strategy coming through here, but Isajad, I don't think is going to survive too much of the onslaught. It seems like the Spartans, aka South Carolina Upstate, are not going to let any of this opportunity pass them by. One nade could end it all. The molly has been deployed. Health quickly getting patched up. Let's see whether or not this is now going to be all downhill. Isajad still not going to be backing down, but up comes a full 3-piece send. Yep, there we have it. St. Lawrence getting sent on their merry way, but quite an aggressive push coming through here from the Spartans.
The one thing there, if you're the Spartans, is you expend a lot of resources. You also take some decent damage to your helmets, your vests. Now, there's a lot of loot in PUBG Mobile as compared to PUBG on a little bit more of a consistent basis across the board, so you can pick up a lot of those pieces of utility if you need them, sometimes the healing as well. And obviously, there's going to be more level 2 helmets and a lot more level 3 vests when required. But this is a big conversation where you have 4 opening picks and a full team wipe. And for Scar, they had a full team wipe as well. Now, they only had 3 kills on that overlay. I want to say that Scar killed Punjab, and Punjab only had 3 players, because I don't think I ever saw 64 at the top left of the screen. So keep that in mind when we get down to the nitty-gritty of counting kill tallies.
well. Let's see if that nitty-gritty is going to be needed at all. In the meanwhile, we are going to be waiting to see where exactly that zone is going to be taking us to. Interesting thing to see the players there from Sign to God still going to be holding on to Campo Militar, as you pointed out earlier, right? You said that they kind of insisted on rotating all the way up towards the northern side, knowing that the zone is situated down south. Now, the nice thing about this being, well, the start of stage 2 is that the blue is not going to be doing too much damage to them, so they could actually afford to stay there for a little bit of time. I wouldn't, tempt fate though, not too much. Maybe look to getting their butts back in towards that zone. But speaking about zone though, I like that nice bit of a focus up that we have over on towards Chumacera, right? Team's definitely starting to condense in that, and I think the beauty of the position that we have going on there, especially if you're looking over to a team like Fate, for instance, right, is that they've got the setup on the ridge, right? They've got that high ground, and they could definitely look to use that in their favor, especially for the teams that are going to be rotating up from those northern positions, right? The line of sight that they have up towards the north could be quite advantageous here.
Now, you said you don't want to tempt fate. What do you have against playing on Polytech? I'm sorry, I was holding on that one for a minute. These eastern rotations are a little awkward, especially for the villains and the rich warriors. They took a little bit longer to move in, and because of those highly populated areas, or highly dense with houses and points of interest, you're going to have better chances of getting in and getting safe, but getting out of those then POIs is going to be a little bit more of a problem and back into the following zone, because the odds that this zone pulls even further towards that east is a big problem. If I'm looking at this from their perspective, it is slow down, wait for the zone to start closing, wait for those teams that are even further into the zone to move further as well, and make it sort of a ripple effect as we move just behind them. Both Seneca rosters are right next to each other, by the way. Technically, Seneca College Toronto, Sting Esports, along with Seneca College core campus with Frostbite, but still two Seneca rosters.
Well, maybe there's maybe Seneca's got something working, right? That's maybe why they've got two rosters. But speaking of which, though, we'll see how these teams are going to look to get themselves dispersed in the current playable area. There's about a minute and a bit of change left on the clock until we are going to be looking at that stage 3 closure, or rather the end of stage 2. It'll be making its way on in. But I'm actually quite surprised to see that there's only currently one team occupying the more northern territory of the current zone itself, right? We do have Stone Cold and the rest of the players there from the team also starting to take a little bit of an approach here. But again, it's not a full-on send, right? It does seem like they might be opting for a little bit more of a, I would say, a western positioning, and I'm pretty sure that is the Frostbite team that I'm referring to as they're moving about their Stone Cold and the rest of them. It just kind of makes sense. But I want to see what's going to be happening over towards the east, right? Still a heavily congested area, not a lot of options really available to the teams to take good control of compounds here.
I'm also looking at this, both Sting rosters, or both Seneca rosters, not both Sting rosters, are in the same general area, but they're mostly avoiding one another. It was Stone Cold and Frostbite that were moving basically straight towards Sting, but they decided to go out and around as soon as they started getting shot at. So good spatial awareness from them to realize, hey, that may not be the greatest of positions to try and take, especially at this point in the zone. I mean, 14 teams left, 14 minutes into the game. We're closing stage 2 and still have a minute and change for that to go down. There's still a lot of this map still to go, and Miramar does not bode well for teams that are out in the open as soon as you get down to maybe the 4th zone or so.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be contesting against the teams that have already been able to establish themselves quite decently, and yeah, the pressure is going to be on. Speaking about decently and pressure, right, we got the villains here from Fanshawe on screen that are going to be making their way all over the place. I like this awareness, just keeping a very, very close eye on the territory, looking to see if they can spot a few things. And I mean, they were also one of our more aggressive teams that we saw coming off of the semis, right? They picked up a grand total of, I believe, 27 eliminations. So far, we are yet to see that aggression being brought with them into the finals. But maybe it's more of an opportunistic play, right? Once we get into, as you said, stage 4, I think that is where a lot more opportunities are going to be opening up.
Speaking of those chances, let's take a look at our map, figure out where everybody is, where those opportunities are starting to lie. I like the positioning from Liquid. They're mostly just avoiding teams while they can. Scar has taken the west side of the important part of the zone. Minas del Valle has basically become obsolete. But look at this rotation from the Seneca Frostbite roster. They were all the way north of Power Grid, north of Monte Nuevo. They took the highway all the way down this west side, and they're moving in behind Scar, who has been occupying the southwest position of the zone the entire game. They landed via Del Mar, they dropped Panjab. They should not think there's a team behind them. Granted, it's been a very long time. It's very reasonable for a team to go for that rotation, but it's something that Scar could just be kind of tunnel visioning on. Keep that in mind if BCIT gets caught out.
Yeah, I mean, you know, looking at the zone shift as well, just really focusing up onto what we have there right in smack dab center zone. I think this is going to be quite the setup to behold, as I think Arctic Talons, right, they are going to have to fight to hold on to what they have. Because center zone, I think, now will become quite the contested position. We already saw the players there from Frostbite starting to make that approach coming in from the western side already. Now Gregorian also going to be trying to defend, as they've got the villains not too far away from them, coming in from that northern side. But over towards the west, we do see a little bit more pressure being applied as the teams really start to focus on getting that zonal positioning going. And this is what we love to see, right? The teams getting close, but one team is still going to be far, far away, and that is players coming through from the STG side to guard St. Clair College, still sipping on that blue juice, and this is now where we need to see them push on forward. Big out push though, South Carolina upstate, making the vehicles go boom. Already sitting on 4 eliminations, and I'm curious to see how many more they're going to be able to find here.
Maybe pick up a free one. That's shift 1 on the far side, or exponent 1, or just, you know, 1 from ecstasy. I still don't know exactly what to call it. My apologies. But he's stuck behind a car or a tractor, it looks like, in the middle of farm fields. Luckily gets out, courtesy of the smoke. But I mean, speaking of sign to God, Akash is still up in El Pozo. That is a full kilometer and change away from the active outside of the blue zone, much less the prepared next zone in white. And in 30 seconds, stage 3 starts to close as well, where Sign to God is still outside La Driera. This is a big rotation for them, with Sting between them in the zone, Dundee alongside, I think, the other Seneca roster of Frostbite as well. There's still a lot for the St. Clair College team to try and get through if they can.
I mean, the pressure is going to be on. Speaking about pressure, though, as we take a look onto the edge of zone here, Gregorian's still going to be trying to lock it down. Villains now also going for a little bit more of a slightly wider rotation, but we also see just to the north, we have the players from the Rich Warriors, aka Cocketlam, also making their push, trying to get at least a foot in the zone, because as you mentioned, the zone is closing up. We've got less than a minute left on the clock to see where this next stage is going to be taking us, and this is where it becomes more increasingly dire for those positions to pan out, right? You can see a lot of spatial awareness and, you know, observations happening in multiple directions, but we've not seen the players here from Gregorian really managing to lock in some successful shots, right? Converting knocks over into those eliminations.
We've seen also with how far away a lot of these fights are happening, there's no real opportunity for South Carolina Upstate or even teams playing similar to them to jump on any of those downs. In this case, it's some Seneca on Seneca action. Meow picks up a down onto a member of Frostbite. But right now, this is a decent opportunity for teams to start rotating in. Stage 3 is fully closing. Sign to God's taking full advantage of that. But while all this chaos is starting to set in, I was talking about stage 4 or so is when we start to see team numbers dwindle. Now is about that time, especially when the next zone starts to close. Look out for that team number at the top left of your screen, maybe even to drop into single digits if we get there.
Yeah, and speaking about single digits, this is where things are going to be looking to be quite challenging now for South Carolina Upside. We got them over towards that eastern side of the zone. They need to find a successful rotation, or at least a successful pathway to get themselves situated back into that zone. Of course, now what that has to do with single digits, well, I can't tell you even if I tried, but I thought that was going to be an interesting segue nonetheless. Speaking about interesting though, up north, right? Fate are going to be keeping a very, very close eye right here on the Rich Warriors. And this is where that blue zone starts to fight back quite a bit. It's going to be nervous now, just trying to reach in. We can see those DBSs coming through from Liquid in the feed as well. It is action all over the place. The Centennial Colts also getting right down to business here. So we can see them trying to defend over towards the southern side of zone. But I think especially looking over towards the Centennials, right, things are going to become quite challenging there as they actually have quite a few teams over towards that southern edge.
Yeah, they've got a lot of fighting all around them. They may be taking advantage of it. Great nade from Toxic Kid. He's getting involved as a third party from distance, downs 2 separate members of the villains, and becomes more of an impactful part for his own team. As of right now, it looks to be a 2 versus 1 with 2 members of 777 alive, but great timing and poor opportunity for Toxic Kid, who now needs to try and run up and around this. If he can get there in time, this is basically a free kill in a 1v1, but he doesn't have all that much help, and it's actually the Sausage that takes him out. A 1 versus 1 with the villains up against 777. A nade being prepped from distance, but it's gonna miss wide left. Poor timing and poor communication may cost 777 a finishing blow. Another nade finishes off Scout Op, but a player has been retrieved, and now it's a 2v1 the opposite direction as 777 for Scar decides, I'm going to go for a res of my own.
I mean, what a beautiful comeback this is coming through here from the Georgian team. But now, Rich, they could be looking to capitalize on this opportunity as well, as we can see them up on towards the northern edge. They don't seem to be all too concerned about what's happening over on the edge of zone here. But I think this is going to be the opportunity now for 777 to get themselves the heck out of dodge, right? We did see Slayer getting knocked on down. And speaking about push, right, I mentioned Centennial not too long ago. They still find themselves in a very similar position we saw them in last time. But I think where things might have changed in there to their advantage is the fact that a lot of teams are still out in that blue zone. Of course, here we go, NCG, they've been able to find their way back to zone, but things are looking pretty dire as they will get swept right under the rug. Team number 14, right there they go. Very unfortunate turn of events coming through here for them, but this is Murmur. The teams will have to start dropping on out. We've hit stage number 5. Liquid are trying to lock it down, as we can see Western Union, aka Ecstasy, trying to find a little bit of their happy place to play contest for the edge of zone.
So, I mean, all in the last 30 seconds, we lost the extra Frostbite roster. Sting has gone down to individual numbers, and we've seen 2 or 3 separate third parties. The Sign to God roster on a very late rotation. We talked about it. It was going to cost him. And magically, we were right. Sometimes omniscience is a good thing on the commentator's side. But down to 11 teams as Stage 5 is getting ready to close itself. Low-key on the backside of this truck. Almost gets run over. Goes for the tech around the car. Almost works, but he's unsuccessful at the end of the day. And Max is going to realize that is a losing battle if I try and go fight it. One is out on an island as well. But Western University still has 2 players alive, despite the fact they were involved in so many separate fights at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, so far it seems like the getting is doing them quite well at this point. But speaking about another team that has to do quite a bit of work, it's still going to be the Georgian team here. You can see 777 trying to find a bit of an approach, a bit of an angle. It's going to be Hunter keeping a very close eye on that zone, trying to be the gatekeeper here. But this is where the villains find themselves in a very similar predicament. Yes, they might be looking to applying power and a bit of pressure onto the side here of 777. But we've got Rich coming in behind them as well. Gunday, as we did see in the feed, now also suffering quite a bit of casualties there. Fate off in the distance, still looking decent. Hansen not going to be able to really lock down the edge of zone. They tried, but they got rushed and off they went. Speaking about pressure though, it's going to be Cockadam, right? It is the Rich Warriors now trying to establish themselves here. They still have a little bit of a way to go, not quite secure up in towards the zone. Villains going to be looking to keep that flow going. Up comes the nade, is going to be able to reach low. This is where the Rich Warriors could find themselves in quite a bit of an angle, but look at that. As fate has it, they might actually secure themselves some kind of a footing here.
They have, and they've gotten in because the villains were pushed off the back of those nades, and Fate was distracted with the shots coming in their general direction. We've lost Team TTR. That was Hansen. Now with 777 going down, we are officially into the points. 777 was the first team to get placement points in this one, but nades raining in on the Rich Warriors, who are in a little bit of a blanket position on the northeast side of the zone. Problem is, they've got the villains to their south and the Fate Warriors, the Fate team to their north. I was thinking Rich Warriors. They are the Rich Warriors. It's an awkward position, but they're trying to take the fight to the Fate, and it looks like it's working for them. A nade lands onto Hustle, who's certainly going to be finished off. It's just a matter of time on that front. And now look at all the space that the Rich Warriors have created on this north side. They don't have to worry about an extra team around this north because they are the team to the north.
Yeah, that is definitely true, but I mean, the problem here is still going to be getting that position in towards the zone, right? As we can see, we've got two teams currently locking down this whole situation. So this is where I'm not quite sure how it is going to be looking to play out, right? Centennial, we have on that southern edge. Yes, there's a few knocks that you can see coming in here, but the big rush is going to come up to the north, right? Quentin Polytechnic are going to try and hold on. Oh, but as fate has it, well, they shan't continue as Pocket Lamb ends it right there for them. They're not out of the woods, right? The pressure is on, and it is now starting to cook all over the zone. Liquid also keeping that flow state going as they try to improve their positioning, trying to get a little bit more of that positioning to line up. But as you can see, things are not looking all too great. Scar also trying to be quite a bit of a menace here as they do find themselves up in towards the north, but still such a long way from the safety of the zone.
So with Pocket Lamb going down, we're down to 4 teams. There were 12 players remaining. Savage ends up going down to the zone. We're down to the top 10 individuals plus 4 teams. Arctic Talon has lost 1 in their own endeavor, so it's just about an average of 2.5 players per team. But with BCIT losing another, that number continues to dwindle. Liquid to the south, Arctic Talon just to their north. To the northeast, it's still the villains, and the northwest, it's the Scar roster from BCIT. But they've spread out a lot more than maybe is advisable at this late of a stage of the game. Good coverage from Ashu onto his team, who has rotated even further towards that south side, but Arctic Talon is right on their heels.
Yeah, I mean, Centennial, they tried to make the most they can. The numbers are definitely starting to, well, take quite a bit of a plunge here as they do say goodbye to Conestoga. As you see, BCIT now also just trying to get themselves on the very edge. As you can see, up ahead, things not looking all too great. It is going to be Centennial meeting their end as British Columbia IT, aka Scar. Now, well, stay true to their name, leaving scars on their opponents as they come through with that mad dash, trying to get themselves secured up in towards the zone. But the villains, Dr. Doom and Hankuku, are still going to be holding onto a little bit of that edge play. I like the split actually coming through for the villains, right? One on either side.
But it's working for him as well. They'll end up picking the winner chicken dinner up off the back of it. That's perfect positioning from Fanshawe and the villains. They play the east side of the zone and pick up that winner chicken dinner. They understood they didn't actually have to play for the high ground. They had to wait for BCIT to cross that mountain. And as soon as they did, their heads would be peeking out. That was the case. Instead of taking the fight to them, they waited in perfect positioning, and they are your game 1 winner chicken dinners.
I mean, you could almost say there was a little bit like a Venus flytrap approach.
Yeah.
That they took, right, to secure themselves that winner chicken dinner. Good example in this game, right? Victory comes to those who wait. I would guess it would be for this one. Of course, speaking about those who wait, let's take a look and see who our MVP is for this match. The boss making their way on through is going to be Neon from Liquid, coming through with 7 eliminations and 977 damage. So quite a bit of an approach being brought in here by the Conestoga College players.
So the one thing I do want to bring up is when we get to the most valuable team, I'm going to be honest, I do not think it's going to be Fanshawe and the villains, even with their late game surge, because they just took so long to activate. Similar to Pocket Lamb and Quantlin Polytechnic, both of those teams had 1 kill when they started fighting each other, and I think it was on to each other, if not Fate was on to somebody else. But at that point, it's the villains who played very well, but they cost themselves some elimination points. We'll take a look at our most valuable team in game number 1. This is based off of eliminations as well. But I'm going to be honest, I don't think it's going to be villains. If anything, it may be Conestoga on their late exit, if not South Carolina Upstate and the Spartans.
I don't think I'm going to disagree with your statement there, but of course, well, let's get the legit answer. Let's see exactly who our MVT is, as we are going to be hopping straight into that. And well, there we have it. Right, it is going to be BCIT that walk away, aka Team Scar, that are going to be picking up those 11 eliminations and 1,800 damage secured in game number 1.
That is a big game. With those 11 elims, they also finished in a fairly clean second place as well. Yeah, late rotations, sure, they could have picked up the winner chicken dinner, but they should be very happy with how they finished. They actually will more than likely finish with more points than Fanshawe, if not almost the exact same amount, because Fanshawe was just kind of disengaged for most of that late stage 6, before it started to close, and that was where they really lost out on the bulk of their points. Now granted, they were playing to their strengths because they were already down to 2 players, they had taken multiple fights beforehand, but it was a big conversation of missing out on those opportunities. We'll take a look at our end of game 1 leaderboard, figure out where the point totals stand. It is Fanshawe to just barely pick up that 8th kill, and they will have the lead out of Miramar.
Yeah, I mean, the points are going to be looking quite great for them. As we know, eliminations, they do go a long way. But, I mean, look at Conestoga as well, right? The only thing separating BCIT and Conestoga is placement points. That's all it is, right? Both teams coming in, packing the double-digit heat, bringing that in on quite the impressive start to the action here on the finals. But of course, well, in contrast then, right, we see there's 5 teams over on towards that right-hand side: St. Lawrence, Hanson, Canada West, St. Clair, as well as Portage. Unfortunately, getting sent back with a bag of donuts. But the beauty of this is they still have 2 maps, at least for today, to try and make up for that, to try and secure themselves a few more additional points.
Yeah, and importantly, we saw for Fanshawe, they had everybody getting involved early. Granted, not everybody got kills. It was down to just 2 individual members who actually got the kills. But before those 2 extra members went down, it was Scout and somebody else on their roster. They ended up playing together and allowing those players to shine. Sometimes you have support players, even in a battle royale. That seems to be the case here today. BCIT, everybody got involved. 2 players of 4 kills. They had a 2-piece for 1 and a solo for another as well. So everybody got on the board, and it allowed them to stay as strong as they were because they played so many different positions late in the game. It allowed them to play as spread out, but as flourishing as they did.
Yeah, I mean, there's no arguing with that fact, and you know, I want to see a little bit of that change up come through as we are going to be making our way towards game number 2 eventually, right? I want to see a team like Frostbite, for instance, focus on that zonal positioning as opposed to, you know, going for a position that is way away from the rest of the playable area, right? You want to see them kind of keep up with the flow, keep up with the action, and just stay up close and personal.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, moving into game number 2, where teams can play a little bit more confident. I feel like BCIT is the best team out of game 1. They had a lot better positioning than most of the other teams. I think the villains mainly took advantage of the fact that BCIT was doing most of the dirty work for them. A, picking up the pieces, and B, just playing their positioning to the fullest extent they could. And that's where sometimes a lot of the points get left out. It's where teams lose that positioning. With such a big difference between winner, chicken dinner, and 2nd or 3rd place, that's a 4 or 5 point drop. Most of the time, unless it's a full 4-on-4, you're not picking up 4 kills to make up for that as well. So that's where, I mean, in this case, Fanshawe was able to escape with those extra points, despite the fact they lost the kill battle to 2 separate rosters.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what's going to come through. I definitely think moving into the next match, I think Centennial is going to be a team to watch. And also then South Carolina Upstate, right? The Spartans, they were kicking up quite a bit of a storm out in the desert. I want to see them now, you know, start kicking hay bales and stuff around as we are going to be moving towards, you know, Erangale. So yeah, I want to see how these teams are going to look to translate and potentially build on the performances that we had in game number 1. As we mentioned, the teams on the right-hand side of that leaderboard, they could definitely do with that, and the pressure is going to be on them to accomplish that come game number 2. But as we know, it's all going to come down to, well, what eventually will be happening, right? Where the flight bus is taking them, where the zone is going to be rotating, how the teams are going to be looking to get themselves situated. Quite a few factors actually play into this at the end of the day.
So in terms of how different semifinals are faring in this grand finals, Portage was in lobby number 2. St. Clair College, if I'm seeing this correctly, they were in lobby number 1. So that's fairly even. But there are a lot of rosters on the right side of that leaderboard that were also on the right side of my roster page over here. They were in that second lobby. Georgian College, they just barely are outside the top 8, albeit it's a draw, but they're losing because of placement points. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a big shakeup going into game 2, because I mean, Portage or Panjab was caught out. They only had 3 members in that game. Could be timing, could be players forgetting that the time changes tomorrow, not today. Remember that for all of you people in North America, time change tomorrow. You gain an hour of sleep. From like 3 a.m. it goes back to 2 a.m. So there's 2 separate 2 a.m. hours. Well, as we deal with the time, we're also going to change up some time of our own. Instead of a 3 a.m. clock, it's more of a 3-minute clock. When we return, it's Erangel and our second map of our grand finals here in the PUBG Mobile Campus Championships. So it's been a little warm in the last couple weeks, depending on where you are in North America. That will change as we move into Erangel. A little bit more of a humid temperature. With Vikendi to close out our day, we'll move into the icy and cold temperatures that are to be expected here in November. My name's Time Polite. That right there is DK. Welcome back to our PUBG Mobile Fall 2024 Campus Championships and our Grand Finals. With Miramar gone and a early winner chicken dinner for the villains, they could like a few more points, despite the fact they're still in first place.
This could be a little bit of that comeback arc storyline thing that we're going to be looking at, right? So the villains reign supreme for game number 1. How much longer will they be in there? We don't know because there's no team called Hero in the lobby, so it's going to be a difficult one. So currently the villains are uncontested. They are just let to run amok as they please. So it's going to come down to one of the other teams to step up and kind of claim the responsibility, right, as the cleanup crew in Aisle 5. Who knows, maybe that could be anyone. So if you've got any predictions as to who's going to be the team to pull it off, let us know in the chat. But in the meanwhile, we're going to be waiting quite patiently to see who will be stepping up to the challenge. I'm expecting a few teams actually, honestly, to really bring quite a bit of their performances to the foreground coming into this one, right? As I mentioned before, I think the Spartans, they're really going to look to kick it up into high gear. The University of South Carolina upstate. Liquid, I could also potentially see a little bit of something maybe coming through from the side of Liquid Esports moving into this game. Of course, the Conestoga College team. And then, yeah, I would also then go with, I think, Centennial, right? AKA the Arctic Talents, right? In preparation, of course, for Vikendi.
I mean, Vikendi's on the cards soon, but for the time being, it's Erangel. Now, our winners from each of the semifinals on Erangel were in semifinal 1, it was Cocket Lamb, and Cocket Lamb had an amazing Erangel in their first semifinal. It was Ecstasy, who had a fair few kills individually. It was 8 in that game as the most valuable individual player. But Cocket Lamb had a team had 10 eliminations. They escaped from Erangel with 20 points. In the other semifinal, it was actually the Spartans of South Carolina upstate to pick up the winner chicken dinner there. But they, I think, still hold the single game record for eliminations post qualifiers. They had 16 elims with 2,800 damage as a team. And that, again, wasn't in some random qualifier with Joe Schmo teams. That was in the semifinals.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes the Joe Schmo teams could also, bring in quite a bit of a surprise. Speaking about a surprise, though, let's take a look at the map and see where these teams are going to be taking us as we are starting down south, heading up north. And the big kicker is going to be where the zone is going to be forming. So we've seen the zone in this instance sometimes take a little bit more of a northern positioning, other times focus right down on towards that military base. But I think in other instances, we've actually seen it center up quite nicely in towards center zone. Honestly, I think for the teams, they're going to be hoping for a nice center shift, right? It will focus up in towards, say, like Pachinki, Gatka, Shelter Farm, anything in towards that central band that we've got going across. Because, well, based on positioning, it's going to be quite comfortable for them to get themselves situated here. But, of course, as we know, PUBG Mobile usually likes to throw a little bit of a surprise in as well. So I think this might be an interesting one as to where the zone is going to be going.
So this is also the first time we're seeing a plane path of this sort starting as far south as it did. In both of our semifinals, it started in Le Pop. In semifinal 1, it finished over towards the south side of Hospital. In number 2, it finished south side of the military base. So it's similar to semi 2, but not particularly the exact same. We're also seeing fairly replicated flight paths for some of these individual teams. The Rich Warriors are headed basically the exact same position. They went Gatka last time. Team TTR, I think, is going the complete opposite direction compared to what they did in their semifinal. They were towards Yasnaya or so. This time, they're headed towards the south side of Georgia Pole. And I mean, seeing how much some of these teams are changing, you watch other esports, or other Battle Royale esports, similar to Apex Legends or Fortnite or something similar, teams will drop basically in the exact same position almost every time. There's even a conversation had beforehand in Apex Legends about where they drop. In this case, because it's a little less accessible, not so easy for some of these rosters.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you got to go for, you know, one of your alt locations, and even if that's not reachable by the flight path or anywhere remotely close where you can find it, you got to go for, you know, the next best thing. Sometimes that's just hard dropping on a vehicle, getting in the car, and off you go, pushing to get yourself situated. We see a similar kind of thing happening with Gunday, as they've already started to mobilize themselves, right? Not dropping necessarily in the most opportune position, but they are utilizing those vehicles to get themselves in a little bit more of an improved setup. Speaking about setups, though, we are going to be looking over on towards Scar, aka British Columbia IT, now holding their own alongside the players here from Fate, which also is going to be bringing quite a bit to the battlefield here.
Yeah, this is a little bit more of an isolated Fate roster than we're used to seeing. They're all on the south side of Yasnaya, maybe minus one player who's further east. You can now see them, I think, in your frame. That should be their overlay popped up. But they're all on the south side of this road, and it's a little bit more of a spread eagle setup for Scar. You got one player on the north side that you can see, another player just off that mini map. You can see the outline of them around the A in Yasnaya, or one of the 3 A's in Yasnaya, making sure they have so much coverage here. And Dill is in a pretty good spot, playing the third-person perspective, not allowing Fate to get out, and just playing for some information. This is a very early stage in the game. There is no reason to rush. The one thing there is reason to be concerned about, though, for all of you possible Portage College fans, Panjab, again, only has 3 players. I believe that will be the case for the entirety of the Grand Finals, at least for today. And they, if anybody's curious, are occupying the mansion.
Ooh. Right, kicking is big. But speaking about kicking it, though, I'm curious to see what's going to happen in Yasnaya, because you've mentioned that we've got 3 Fate players in front of us, right?
Yeah.
Player number 4 is west, just over to the western side, behind the players from Scar.
That's who I saw.
So BCIT could actually maybe get rushed and pincered as they find themselves over towards that western side. The probability of that happening, I don't quite know, because we've not really seen them in a situation similar to that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. In the meanwhile, we are going to be looking at Coquitlam just here on the foothills of the lovely Everest as they fall back in towards Gatka. And, well, we did see the players from TTR just holding up towards the north of their position. Western Uni, though, are going to be looking to find a few sprays, as they are now on the receiving end, as BT comes pushing up right towards them. I like this reaction coming in here from Nax, quickly just looking to play for the high ground, trying to get that extra bit of elevation to try and scope in, focus, and apply the pressure right onto the side of BT.
Yeah, this is a weird position, though, for Western. This is the only team that landed south of the bridges. They were the team that decided to land in the military base, and their rotation has been caught out by BTX. So their odd positioning now could catch them out. Loki playing the third person, and you actually get more of an angle inside the car. That's why he hopped in and then hopped back out. The problem is, as soon as you get in there, you are absolutely stationary. And we saw the headshot from very far away. That's Issa Jat, basically 200 meters away, inside of a house, playing a window glitch. And it seems like it's working fairly well for him in the early stage. We've also lost a player. That was Coquitlam, who got the kill. Where in the world was that fight? That was the Rich Warrior. Oh, it was TTR. That's who it was.
Yeah, we've got quite a few points of interest now starting to come into play here. Gatka, though, actually easing up quite a bit, right? So the Rich Warriors, they are going to be sitting quite happily there, as no one is going to be looking to contest them. In the meanwhile, we do have that separation, right? Teams pulling up north, pulling down to the south, pulling up into towards that eastern side. So, yeah, I think there's going to be quite a good advantage to come on through, especially when our outlying teams, the teams are yet to secure themselves a position up in the wood zone, start making their way on through as well. So I'm going to be looking over into a position, like I would assume, territories like Rozhok, School, those are going to be receiving quite a bit of that influx of players, potentially even Pachinki, as we can see a lot of love being shown to that position at this current point in time. But also then down towards the bridges here, right? We've been looking at Ecstasy, aka the squad from Western, holding their own alongside BT, but we do see the addition of the Georgian college team also finding that slight approach coming in from that eastern front. So 777 could maybe bring in some kind of a contribution to the carnage here.
I'd like to see some of this carnage really step up for Ecstasy. If they have to run away, they'd have to do so with some of those vehicles. But if I'm right, BTX is kind of just swarming them and playing for more of a spacious outpost / outlook rather than actively getting in these fights, because there's no reason to actively rush Western with how spread out Western is. And I think BTX understands that. That's good situational awareness in a still 16 team lobby. But at the same time, you could be throwing away an opportunity to get some very much needed points if you are BTX at this point in the day. I mean, St. Lawrence out of game number 1, 0 points flat. Yeah. But Plantlin, I mean, hey, that's a fight we were waiting for almost like 3 or 4 minutes. Finally started to
Alright, so I would assume the player that we had situated over to the edge was, of course, Hustle, that now got found and had a few of those shots connecting in towards them. This is going to be Fate now trying to figure out what is the play going to be. How will they try and maybe avenge their fallen teammate, which has not been completely taken off the map, but based on what we see up on that mini-map, yeah, it's not going to work out all too well for them, as Fate now is down to a 3-piece. So that's going to be RQ, Novus, and Shah that will be looking to maybe contest for some kind of an angle up in towards Yasnaya Poliana. But I think ideally here, Scar would probably use the opportunity to get the heck out of there and get themselves back into towards zone, because they've got the advantage now, right? They know that Quantum Polytechnic is situated to the east, right? They've eliminated that western gatekeeper. I
mean, with another player just gone, I feel like this is a pretty decent opportunity. And yeah, they're going to do it. They're just going to run away. At this point, you've already taken out a member of Fate. That's taking your victories where they already sit and not over-dedicating something to a possibly losing fight. You don't have all that much information to the remaining players. You don't need to put yourself out of position trying to find some straggling individuals. I like that call. Scar gets out, they pick up a couple extra vehicles, and they understand, we've got a kill, we've got a point, let's go elsewhere. Reminder, BCIT placed second in game number 1. They had 11 elims and 6 placement points from a second place finish. This is a very good roster that will still have a lot of time to pick up points. That is very good situational awareness from them. Just, hey, understand, we can get out, let's do it.
Yeah, well, let's see who's going to be doing the most at this point, as we got Centennial also trying to find a little bit of a positioning here, as we got them both circling. Interesting spot though, right? All the way towards that more eastern side of zone. It's interesting to see how the teams look to kind of prioritize their angles here. I mean, this could be, at least for the side of Centennial, a beautiful read looking to the fact that we have teams situated onto the eastern side. But it's all going to depend on how those rotations are going to pan out for the opposing teams, right? Because we also still have that zone shift that is yet to come on through. And I think if the zone would be to shifting a little bit more in towards, let's say, the southwestern side of the playable area that they have at their disposal, this could maybe be quite a bit of a setup then for a team like Centennial here.
So looking at the map from our perspective, we can see it, you cannot. The zone just closed, and closed even further into Georgia Pole. The furthest east point is the eastern side of Ruins. The furthest south point is the north side of the quarry. And the furthest north is just south of the Zargi. It covers the entirety of Georgia Pole, north and south, Gatka, Ruins, Hospital, and a fair percentage of the western coast of Erangel. But of that zone, there's still basically 2, if not 3 square kilometers that is not playable. You can see it now. Look at that west side. That's 2 or 3 square kilometers that's just water. You can't do anything out there. You don't want to be out there. That means that usually on Erangel, it's stage 4 or so where teams start to get eliminated. Here, we could see that happen late stage 3 because of the lack of playable zone.
I mean, that could definitely be quite an interesting position, that edge right? That western side of the zone, the unplayable area. But one thing that I am noticing is quite the convergence of teams up in towards South George, right? It is going to get hot and sweaty and super uncomfortable based on the sheer number of players looking to get themselves crammed in there. I'm going to be looking over to Fate as well, as we can see on that far eastern side, playing a STG-ish kind of approach. At least they are looking to get into zone a little bit sooner than what we had over in Miramar. But yeah, definitely an interesting rotation that we have on their end. And I mean, the teams are starting to circle, right? We have that circular motion starting to develop as the teams move up bit by bit. And this is going to be that big old kicker. This is going to be absolute carnage. And I think in a position like this, it's all going to come down to positioning, right? I mean, Cocket Lab, I love this for them up onto Everest. But now it's going to come down to whether or not they can actually find that approach onto the side here of STG.
Now, there are multiple other teams, not directly in this fight, but still in the vicinity. They've got South Carolina upstate. It seems like some of Arctic Talent, at least the remaining members of them, are a little bit further south. So this is not a safe fight for either team. The benefit is with Everest, you still got a lot of playable area around you to kind of create a pseudo bunker. But the problem is, as soon as you get stuck in that bunker, there's no getting out alive. And here, for the Rich Warriors, they need to get some points and get out alive. If not, just focus on the getting out alive point. Portage College, with only their 3 rostered members today, they're the first team exiting as they go down 13 minutes and change into this one. A little bit longer. They actually lasted 10 minutes longer, if not 11, than they did back in game number 1, but they still exit with a flat 0 points.
I mean, more is more. Right, more is more, so well done on that one. Longer time counts either which way you look at it. Speaking of like time, though, it is going to start to run out of here for stage number 2 as the blue zone closure will start right about now. We've got about 2 minutes and a bit of change left. Fortunately for the teams, most of them are already well situated within the zone. It's just going to be a team like Fate, and of course, then the players coming through from, I believe, Frostbite that find themselves on those extreme angles as they now start to make their push on through. Rich Warriors still going to be locking it down. And I like what you said about that bunker-ish kind of position up on Everest here. I mean, we see that to be quite true for both squads right at this point in time. And I'm curious as to whether or not somebody's going to maybe look to contest. Based on the setup that we've got on the surrounding teams, I don't really see that playing out just yet, but it still could be quite interesting if somebody chose to come up and contest for Everest. Would Everest then, you know, like if Everest, of course, rather, would be a contentious point within the next zone.
With how long this fight is taking, also think about maybe not the amount of ammunition the teams have, but the utility. A lot of times you want to get out using the smokes. They've already used a lot of their forward utility, nades, flashes. Nobody carries those in PUBG Mobile, let's be honest with each other here. But Molotovs as well. All that being gone, and with how late this is, there's not a lot of time for looting late stage unless you find an occupied house that has not been looted yet. So those teams could get caught out unless they take out a few rosters of their own and resupply. That's another instance that a lot of teams just don't immediately think about when taking some early fights. It's how much of those expendable utilities they use and how much they want to try and get back.
I mean, you also got to hope that whoever you're pushing has what you need, right? Otherwise, it's going to be slightly null and void. But in the meanwhile, yeah, we do have that blue zone almost done with its closure. St. Lawrence are going to be looking to get themselves situated a little bit more towards that southern side. I like the fact here that we have Berar and their teammate Isajat, right? Also just setting off a little bit of an off position so that everyone is not all too centralized, just up into one setup here. But now that big shift is going to come on through, and you know that contention I was talking about for Everest is going to play out because Everest is now on the southern side of zone, right? Rich Warriors, SPG, they find themselves in quite the important setup here. They've got quite a controlling angle with regards to the zone right now.
So there are 4 teams south of the Art of Talent, Spartans, Fate, BTX, and Villains. That is 4, right? That's 5 teams south of them, and Ecstasy's rotating in that general area. Watch for all of these rosters trying to get involved. This is Sign to God getting away, and with very good timing at that. They have found an unoccupied compound nearly dead center of the zone. If Sign to God isn't saying thank you to whatever deity they're praying to, they're doing it wrong.
Well, if you get blessed, you get blessed, but let's see for how much longer they'll stay blessed as we quickly jump over to the plays here from BTX. St. Lawrence are going to be trying to survive, so we got Ecstasy just rushing up on towards them. The pressure is on, but this is Western University trying to find their own points on the board. It is a 1v1. As you can see, it's going to be Nax up against Punjab here. Punjab keeping close eye, trying to get their teammates back out into the fight. I love this distraction, though, keeping St. Lawrence from getting the rest of their C. Will it be enough? Western goes down as St. Lawrence very narrowly escapes the inevitable defeat here. They do score a glorious 4 eliminations, though.
And it looks like everybody's going to be picked up as well. Because they have 2 separate members now alive, they should be able to pick up the entire team. That timing is insanity for Western University, somehow keeping themselves in it. And Gunday, with 4 pickups and 4 players still alive, they've got 3 kills out of it because I think one of them was stolen from very far away. But still, the eliminations alone count for something, if not most of what they gain from that fight.
Well, let's see how far they can try to push this one, as we do see Gunday, aka Canada West, now yet again finding themselves in a bit of a contentious position here. They're going up against Sting. Sting, though, they don't seem to be looking to budge anytime soon. But this is one of our more Western angles. Volcano, oh, that nade is going to find maybe a bit of damage. No, actually doesn't find anything. Volcano didn't even flinch.
Hey, sometimes you got nerves of steel. Other times I think you're sitting at the top of the stairwell, so it probably helps your case. We've seen a couple instances of shotguns in close range. One underrated shotgun, personal opinion, is the sausage that we saw in the previous game, or the SASG. We call it the sausage in Rainbow Six Siege. I love seeing the SASG because it has a little bit less per shot of efficacy of the DVS, but it's more of a rapid fire gun. Great nade, by the way, to go on the backside of the skyscraping apartment building, and the kill to pick it up. It's just seeming like Sting is more condensed than they should be in their individual rooms, yet spread out to where they can't help each other, which is about as ironic as things get when you play a team game.
It's like a catch 2022, right?
Yeah.
So let's see whether or not that is going to hold true now for the rest of Sting, as we got Gunday, Scarface, and the rest of the crew now just clearing it out floor by floor, looking to find the next few potential points on the board. Doesn't seem like they are going to be able to lock it in just yet, as we do see a Hunter actually managing to escape, as they are going to be clearing it out. They've now ducked down into the drink, but that is not out of... That's all of it yet. Up goes the push. Oh! Scarface getting found, but that is going to be a quick response onto Volcano as well. So, well, Sting now down to only 1. So the Hunter is now going to be hunted.
So Seneca as a school, or as 2 schools, have really not had the greatest of endeavors of today. Sting is down early. I don't even think they had a point at this time in the game. I mean, yeah, they have 1 player still alive, maybe a placement point, if not just an elimination point or something similar. But even Frostbite hasn't had the greatest go of things. They're still alive. They're rotating in from the north side of Georgia Bowl Apartments into Scar. But they need to find more than just their current positioning. And South Carolina Upstate is getting involved in the fight as well. They had a player go down. All this chaos, all within, what, like a square kilometer or 2, as the zone closed again further northeast?
Yeah, it's rough. It is rough, but, you know, we need to see these zones. This is the finals at the end of the day, right? The team's got to work their butts off to get those points on board. And so far, we've got 2 teams sitting on pretty decent amounts of eliminations. You can see St. Lawrence, Canada West, both teams on 5 eliminations apiece. It's going to be Fanshaw, aka the villains over here. Oh, trying to sneak in a few of those additional points, but so far, it is not looking to go all too well. They find a little bit of opposition. Dr. Doom has received a bit of a boom. Where's this play gonna go though? Ultron is gonna be tempting fate here, testing the waters, the shots connecting up one after the other in close succession. But yeah, Centennial, they are just waiting in the wing. Quick rush going through from Ultron, gets the pick up. One down, one more to go. Ooh, beautiful dodge. I love this aggression.
There's that sausage I was talking about. Ultron ends up picking up the finish with it. And it looks like Scout OP's putting himself way out of position. What in the world is he doing in a buggy? That is the worst possible decision you could have made. Now you've left your team out on an island. That nade could take them out. Very well thrown. Drops one, puts them back down to a DVNO state, and another one could take out Ultron. Could that be the finishing blow? I don't know if Gas is going to live through this blue zone. He won't. So for the time being, he'll go to a DVNO stage himself. So it's basically a 1v1 in the blue. Karangi realized, I'm not taking that fight, no thank you. Ankuku goes down to the blue, and Karangi drives into the water. What in the world is going on just outside the playable aspect of the zone? And how in the world are there still 14 teams alive at this point in Stage 5?
I mean, we've got 3 teams situated in zone, right? The other 11 teams are on the outskirts and pretty close to the edge of the blue zone. As we do see Fake now just taking a quick little hit over on towards Fake. Picker there, the shot connecting up. Quantum Polytechnic now with 1 elimination under the name Nervous. Finding themselves in a very difficult position, right? Trying to see if they can maybe secure their teammate, but of course they do find themselves in a very, very vulnerable angle. Meanwhile, there's going to be Toxic Kid here from, well, the Georgian side of the approach, looking to maybe find a little bit of an angle to play off of. Again, very, very difficult spot, right? They need to get up in towards zone. There's still 3 of them left. We've got Zeus in the car. Scar is now going to get met with all the lead flying up towards them, because Claire also quickly trying to find their rotation as STG sprays up into the side here of TTR. I mean, Hansen also not the easiest position, but it seems like they are just so close to getting themselves positioned up in zone.
The weird part of how this zone is pulled is I think there are a total of 3 buildings inside the active white zone, and that may be an overestimation of things. There's just few on the east side of Georgia Pole, and I think a tiny hut. So this will very quickly turn into what is basically a game of Miramar on the map of Erangel, just a slightly different warmth of color grading. And that's the crazy part of where we are. Very little of this zone is actively occupied by buildings. To make it further complicated, there's the river to split both sides and only 1 active bridge in play, which makes the rocks around them less accessible. Gunday has a player that's going sniping from outside the playable area, and somehow Liquid's still alive. There is less than 3 players on average per team, with 12 teams and 28 players alive, and we're seeing so many get down as this game continues. Conestoga, well, that's bad timing for lost in, and he looks like he may get taken out. For some reason, is shooting at a submerged vehicle and just completely exposing himself to everybody. Quantlin Polytechnic will be the ones that exit in 12th, but they will not be the last team that exit as this zone continues to be dangerous as Hansen goes down just the same.
Yeah, we are going to be looking at quite a few more teams now starting to drop all over the place. I think once this blue zone has closed up, right in the next few moments, we could be left with potentially 3 teams. I think we are going to be saying goodbye to at least 7 based on just the overall positioning that we have here. Gunday could maybe be one of those teams as we can see them now just fighting for an angle coming through from that western side. Of course, they are going to be those gray dots you can see up on the mini-map. Also, you see them on screen right over there alongside that lovely bit of purple that we've got cooking there as well, right? That is going to be the players all the way from 77. So the heat is on, the pressure is there. Georgian, I'm not quite sure if they're going to be able to get themselves back out of that drink and all the way up in towards the zone. Sinclair, they are going to be looking to lock down the edge of zone here, but the scary part is they themselves have not yet been able to find a good secure spot in the zone.
BTX is sitting inside of a UAZ in the water, just waiting for players around them to die. Same thing for Ultron, and Karangi is sitting on the edge of the river on the far east side. He's that gray dot you see at the bottom of the mini-map at the top right of your screen. The only one from Arctic Talon still alive. Great nade from Chota. Takes down 1 for Scar. Fanshaw, the winner chicken dinners from our previous game, they're gone outside of placement points. And here's South Carolina Upstate, the winners of their own semifinal bout,
here on Erangel, they're trying to step up in their own way. And here's that SASG I was talking about. A second kill already for Chota, and he's not done. Has another nade that he's going to lob up and play as a bait, and it works perfectly, but he misses the opening shots. He takes full advantage of the second opportunity he's given. PCIT, the second place finishers in game number 1 on Miramar, go down outside the top 5.
I mean, this could be that turning point now for the players coming through. Right, they've got the zone, they've got that angle, and now they can just go fishing, right? Because all the other teams are gonna have to push up from the southern approach, right? You got BT still holding in the drink. We got Sinclair, as we can see obviously on screen now, hiding on the side here. We've got Gunday just on the side, and I mean, well, I wasn't too far off. I said we are going to be losing 7 teams. We lost 6, so I'll take that as a win. But here we go now. Gunday trying to make the most of what they have. It's going to be up to Jazzy, though. And, well, in the next few moments, this blue zone is just going to come roaring in, especially from that western side, right? That is the fast side of the zone. And it's going to be absolutely brutal on these squads.
The nade. Watch the nade. Oh my goodness. Jazzy just barely avoids it. Sook seemingly did as well, but they're both now caught in the blue. You talked about it, the far side being caught out. Still down to 4 teams. 1 member of Sign to God. He's still on the south side of the river. There's no way Akash lives through this. They'll go down, but trying to find a kill before they do. It'll end up being the play zone that takes out Sook, and the USC Upstate Spartans take the winner chicken dinner out of Erangel. They will go back-to-back on maps of Erangel here between the semifinals and grand finals, and they're positioning not only that, but the SASG play in a 1 versus 3 against a very formidable BCIT gets them their win here on map 2.
I mean, you got to give it up to BCIT though, right? Second game that they've been able to find themselves with a high finish. Positional ones, right? Making it up into those late rankings. So yeah, you gotta give it up to BCIT. Phenomenal approach, but I mean, it is gonna be the Spartans kicking up even more action as they've stepped their way through into this game. I mean, it's a nice changeover, right? Previous match they picked up 2 placement points. This time around, coming through, banking the full 10. So a glorious play. Speaking of glorious though, we got to take a look and see who our MVP is, right? Our OP player. It was Neon in the previous match. This time around, it is going to be Gunday Jazzy to secure themselves that honor, going through with 5 eliminations and 617 damage. Very impressive play. But as we know, Gunday found themselves in quite a bit of a sticky spot, right? Getting stuck over on that western side, having to try and rotate up with the blue.
This would be a completely different conversation if they had a little bit of a better positioning under the bridge. They decided to try and troll this game out. They got trolled by the pool of the zone. But Gunday still picks up, I think as a team, 10 or so elims, plus their placement points for finishing. I don't know if it was 3rd or 4th. It really came down to timing with them and Sign to God. But they had 0 points out of game 1. That is a big change for them, trying to show that they still very much belong here in day number 1. We'll take a look as well at our most valuable team in game number 1, or game number 2, first time we're seeing Erangel. We'll still see it one more time tomorrow. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't know who it is. It's very reasonably Canada West, because when there were still 10 teams alive, they had 9 elims, plus whatever placement points they retrieved. Let's see who the MVT is. I'm gonna put my money on Gunday. It is, with 11 elims and 2,000 plus damage.
Yeah, they come to us from in the future, right? 2055. It's around the corner somewhere. Don't know quite when and where, but it's coming. But yeah, big up to Gunday, Canada West, 11 eliminations. It looks amazing. And yeah, I mean, we did see 2 teams also, right, in the previous match come through with those 11 eliminations. So now we've had our 3rd team. I think this is a good play though. I mean, Canada West, they had a bag of donuts, right, on Miramar. Yeah. Coming into Erangel, they brought the donuts with them, they consumed them, and they turned them around.
So we talked about who the individual MVP is. We'll take a look at the scoreboard to figure out what our numbers are after game 1. But I have my own MVP out of game number 2, and that's Chota from South Carolina Upstate. I think it's a 15-point swing or so for South Carolina Upstate. He had a 1 versus 3. If he doesn't get those 3 kills, they lose out on those 3 points. plus they would have placed in 6th place, which is like 1 or 2 placement points, nothing whatsoever in comparison. Instead, they finished with another 7 eliminations instead of what would have been 3, and 12 total placement points, 10 in this game instead of what would have been 2. That is an insane change for an individual 1v3, a team that is still sitting in a very close 2nd place.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to talk about consistency, we've seen 2 teams really lock in quite aggressively on that, just based on overall points. Well, kind of, but kind of also not quite,
yeah.
Right? I mean, Fanshawe, they only added 2 points onto the board in comparison to what we saw come off of the back of the first game, which was 18 points. But yes, British Columbia, they definitely stepped up to the plate, kept that consistency going. I mean, there's nothing much else that we can say about South Carolina Upstate, right? They've proved themselves. Yeah. All the points that you see there is from this game. That's it, right? It's pretty insane to look at these numbers. But of course, well, if we take a look at what we've had, well, I say that, and they had 2 eliminations added on top of the 10 that they got, or no, 2 placement points rather on top of what they've had so far. So I mean, things looking really great here, but the climb is on there, right? And this is what we're going to see more of, the teams trying to build up that consistency, clawing their way through. We've seen that happen in this game, right? Teams shifting from the right hand side up onto the left. Now we got to see more, right? We need to have a super contentious fight to close off the final match here for day number 1.
Yeah, South Carolina Upstate escaping from game number 2 with the win. But hey, Erangel was very back and forth with how that zone continued to pull away from most of civilization. It originally contained all of Georgia Pole, Hospital, basically most of Ruins, and then pulled further east of Georgia Pole and further and further. At the end, there wasn't a building in playable contention. It was just down to the natural environment and for some reason a bridge. And the bridge ended up being the Achilles heel of Gun Day. They were playing it like trolls, and they were trolling the teams against them, and then they got trolled by the blue zone. Ironic, what goes around ends up coming back around. They end up going out in 4th place, but not a bad game for Gun Day by any means. Sure, they're still only in 6th place, but 15 points is 15 points. Fairly substantive game, especially with the kills they retrieved early. But game number 2 has come to a close. I'm going to come back from our break with an insane stat for you with how much that individual fight from Chota changed our current outlook. But until then, we'll take a break. Vikendi, when we return here on the PUBG Mobile Campus Championships. 2 games down, still 1 to go here on day 1 of our fall 2024 PUBG Mobile Campus Championships. My name's Light. That right there is DK. Our game 2 finish is possibly the most statistically significant that there could be. I'll get into the numbers in a second, but DK, what are your takeaways from our first 2?
I like the step up. The team's definitely bringing in quite a bit of heat here, and it shows you how important positioning is, right? Positioning, especially in a pretty crazy zone shift like we had in there. A lot of the teams getting caught out on that southern side, trying to find their way up, trying to push on in. Yeah, position is going to be absolutely key here.
Yep. Well, talking about position, we can see some leaderboard positionings possibly change moving into game 3. But I want to talk about our leaderboard out of game 2 in a little bit more of a significant fashion. So out of game number 2, South Carolina Upstate has 26 points. Of those 26 points, 3 of those kills came from the BCIT players that they finished in a 1v3. That was Chota's 1v3. They had 1 more onto the remaining player that was a straggler at the end of the game. And then they got another 8 placement points because Chota won that 1v3. If he doesn't 1v3, they finish in 6th, they get 2 placement points. Because they don't finish in 6th and instead they get the winner chicken dinner, they get 12 points that they otherwise would not have had. On the other side of that, BCIT, who is in 2nd place right now, has just 23 points at this point. If, in the same vein, they had those 2 kills on towards South Carolina, plus the 1 kill that South Carolina had, because we're assuming that with 3 players in a very formidable roster, they're going to pick up that same kill. They're going to pick up that same winner chicken dinner. That is a 23-point swing. If, and only if, BCIT wins that fight, they would right now be at 34 points. And South Carolina Upstate would be at 14. That would put them in 6th place. But instead, South Carolina is leading with 26 points, and just behind them is BCIT with 23. That singular fight causes a 23-point swing between 2 rosters. That's insane how 1 fight can cause that in a 1v3 for Chota. That shows you how we get to some of these score significant points in the game.
I mean, and it's pretty impressive, right? Just how important, as you said, 1 single play can be. It's a deciding play, and well, I'm hoping sincerely for the teams that they don't let a play like that potentially pass them by. That they could try and capitalize on it. I don't think that they know how big of an impact, 1 play like the one that you're referring to just there has made. Yeah, it shows you like just how crazy and actually scary things can be out on the battlefield, right? It could all change in an instant.
It shows you how big sometimes individual fights that you're not thinking about in the moment can be, especially early in the game. Because a lot of the times you'll see teams play in very similar veins to other rosters that they're going up against. And should one team win a fight early in the game, they would take a similar pathing. They would have the same general perspective. They'd have the same killing opportunities that the team that they were killed by had. And that's, again, 10, 15 points in any direction that are big changes. But this one's even more important because it's so high on the leaderboard. I mean, losing out on 11 points in the early stage, if you're BCIT, that would put their lead, not only would they be leading, but they'd be leading by 14 points right now. Especially over Fanshawe, who won game 1. Instead, they're trailing by 3 points to a team that they previously were leading by, if I'm doing math correctly, 8 points themselves. As Alexa reminds me that it's time to plan dinner, so don't forget to eat food, kids.
Yeah, I mean, because pens don't really pack as much nutrients as
I've got coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yours is cold. You got something in there to help keep you awake. But I want to see now, as we are on the topic of cold, right? We are going to be heading over onto the map of Vikendi. It's going to be our one and only play of Vikendi for the grand finals here.
Yep.
So we've seen the teams work their way through the semi-finals, right? They've played in a little bit of this as well on Vikendi. So I'm curious to see how all of that knowledge that they've been able to gather is going to translate up into the map over here. Speaking of which, of course, in case you forgot where we've been for the day, let's take a look at that map rotation. and we'll remind you where we're going. So we started out in the desert, we cooled it down rather a little bit as we moved into Erangel, but well, not stopping there. We are going to be heading all the way into Vikendi to add, I guess, the icing on top.
Or the snowing on top.
Yeah, the sprinkles.
Maybe. Yeah, whatever it may be. Back in the semifinals, it was Sting Esports who won their semifinal match of Vikendi. In the other semifinal, it was actually Gunday in the University of Canada West. And they had a very decent shot at winning game number 2 there in Erangel as well. But unfortunately getting caught out in terms of timing. By the way, in terms of placement out of that game, Canada West had fourth place. St. Lawrence escaped with second. And it was St. Clair College who got away with a very, very cheeky third. So some timing there ended up catching out some individuals. I'm going to go fact check myself on that one because I could be wrong, but I do think it was St. Lawrence who ended up getting that third place finish. But on Vikendi, if you're Gunday, I mean, that game, I was talking about how the University of South Carolina Upstate won their game of Erangel, and they've got a very good shot at doing it again. And magically, they do. I think it's the only time a person's ever predicted a Battle Royale winner and been correct. High five me. That could very well be the case here for Gunday as well, because they showed very good strides in Erangel, and they're going onto a map where they're visibly much more comfortable.
Well, let's see how much of the comfort they are going to be possessing here, right? As we know, Vikendi, first zone rather of the day. It's going to be a crazy one. That's normally the case on Vikendi. It's going to take us to one of the extremes, either west, north, east or south. I almost did the west twice. Maybe the west is the best because it sounds so nice. I don't know. We'll figure out pretty soon. But I think one of the odd shifts out, the odd shift could be a little bit more of a centralized zone coming through onto this one. Of course, we are going to be finding out. But first up, we need to take a look, see where that flight path is going to be taking us through, as we are going to be starting close to Milnar, down on towards that southern side. We've got the winery there as well, so it does seem like we are heading up on towards the Northern Territories. Yes, indeed, we are heading straight up into Trevno, so a nice little bit of an eastern positioning here.
Speaking of the Northern Territories, for anybody who happens to be curious, I think Portage College, the squad that only has 3 rostered players today, is the furthest north team in this grand final. They're, according to their website, about 161 miles north of Edmonton, Alberta, which, for all of you unfamiliar with Canadian geography, is cold. It's far north and it's cold. That's the abridged version of where they're from. But they may be heading maybe a little bit further towards the central part of this already extremely cold map. Sign to God heading north/northeast. That team just does not like the south, it seems. Whereas other squads only go south and east. They are the complete opposite.
Well, either which way, we are getting good coverage on the map, right, to say the very least. So, yeah, I guess it works. In the meantime, it's going to be the players there from... well, BT, as we can see already, securing themselves a position down on towards that southern side, as you were referring to. But they are not alone. They do have a little bit of company that is going to be looking to push in right there alongside with them. It's, of course, the Arctic Talent team, right? Centennial College, that is now occupying the space just towards that northeastern side of St. Lawrence. So the pressure is going to be on Winery. Sometimes a bit of a contested position. The zone, though, is going to be quite nice, right? It is going to be shifting up and centering in pretty much on towards Podvosto. So the teams are not going to have to hustle all too much to get themselves into this next phase.
Now, this is an awkward position as well, considering most of the time that we saw Vikendi 2 weeks ago, most of the zone was unplayable. That's not the case here today. As we start to jump into some of these individual fights early, it's again Liquid and TTR. Correct me if I'm wrong, this is the second time they've met early in the game. They just apparently like dropping near one another. Maybe they're pretty good friends and have a slight rivalry going on. Either way, they cannot afford for this to happen. Just for a little bit of a brevity view, Conestoga at this point is in 4th place with 19 points. On the other side, TTR from Hanson College, they have a singular point on the leaderboard.
Perfect 20. Right. perfect 20 between the two teams. That is not the kind of way that they would have wanted to get to 20, but you know, if the math maps, then, you know, well, who am I to say otherwise? In the meanwhile, let's see whether or not Hansen will be able to get a few additional points on board. I mean, Liquid, they've been really keeping that, pardon the pun, the flow going here today.
It's like
So,
you said that.
so I want to see if TTR can maybe bring in a little bit of a response here, right? Because I mean, TTR is not too far off of TTL.
That's true. You know, I've actually got a sweatshirt that says TTL. I think it's here actually. I'll show it between games. It's really cool. It's a gift from my girlfriend. It's very nice. But unrelated, Gun Day squad I was talking about. You can see Canada West on the right side of your screen. If I am correct, which I think I am, they lost a player in their fight with Panjab. So Panjab has gone out in dead last in 3 consecutive games. They have maybe 1 point, and that's a heavy maybe, because I'm not sure if they killed a member of Canada West, or if they just started with 1 less player on this game. But something to keep in mind, because Canada West only has 2 good points. They may have a few more, but I think Panjab only started with 2 players in this game compared to the 3 they had before. Liquid starting to go hunting for those points. Great DBS shot, finds 1. There's a player flanking behind them. I don't know if they're aware of it. Doesn't seem like they're reacting to what should certainly be a sound cue under them. But the positioning alone is enough to scare away the extra incoming member, if anything at all. I could just be wrong.
Well, we'll find out soon enough whether or not that is going to be of any concern to them. All right. Okay, so it's going to be Liquid, TTR. I mean, they've been going at each other for a little hot minute here. There we go. See, so you know, Lost just making sure that all the snow comes off the roof, because you can't have that. It's not good for the roof, right? You got to clear it up. You know, just bring in their own slight bit of contribution there as well. I like this quick little pickup of the vehicle coming through for Fate, aka Quantum Polytechnic. As you can see, Hustle now, well, doing as the name suggests, right? Hustling to get those vehicles sorted so the team can have their rotation secured. I mean, especially looking at where Center Zone has decided to go, this is going to be quite an interesting play, as we've got the teams now starting to focus a lot of their effort up in towards that central zone.
So importantly, Gun Day is down to 3 members. They dropped early on Castle and met with Panjab and lost 1 to Panjab. So that's the reason we're down to 58 on the overlay. Keep that in mind maybe for later. With Fate here alongside 777, I don't know if they're aware he's playing Bridge Troll right now. And because he's still in this general area, if he makes enough of a sound cue, it could be a bait. The goal could be, hey, everybody else play for that high ground above me. I'll just be the little confusing annoyance under the bridge and get the kills for free. That would be the call I'd be making. And then because I solo queue into squads, nobody would listen to me and I'd die anyway. It happens. It's a shame.
Yeah, it's a shame indeed. But well, let's see. Maybe Georgian squad can pull this one out of the bag. So far, a nice little bit of a distraction there. I mean, it does seem like that elevator play is maybe going to come on in. We do see Fate now also starting to close the gap here as they send down into the valley, going to try and inspect that bridge. But I think this is where 777 now needs to kind of reposition themselves to try and elevate the aggression here, to take it that extra step further, because, I mean, Fate also now getting shot at by the players from Scar all the way towards Port Boston. Ooh, look at that, though.
Sorry to kill there for Shaw, and Shaw picks it up. The problem there for Georgian College, look at the players on the map, the little purple dots to the north side of these 3 Queensland Polytechnic members. The goal was for them to get above this fight before it happened, and they would play the supporting role. Instead, because they took just a little bit too long to rotate, it seemingly was there that the Queensland understood there was a rotation coming from that direction. They could not play that supporting role, and I mean, there's no way to save Toxic Kid there, just no chance. Again, a player from a team that has a very decent shot at being contributors goes down early. And Georgian College, they similarly cannot afford to lose a member that early. They've got 3 total points through 2 games. The team that is furthest away from them is South Carolina Upstate. They are an entire British Columbia Institute of Technology away.
a 23-point difference.
That's a different way of explaining that.
Yeah.
23-point distance, yeah. But speaking about distance, though, we are looking at teams also now still starting to eventually make their way on through. There's still quite a bit of open space available on this map, seeing that we're only in, well, stage 1. But we do see the teams predominantly focusing up in towards center zone, as we can see on screen right now, but then also down towards Villanova, right? We've got, yeah, the shots connecting up in towards center. And I think actually for the team of Fate, having Scar sneaking up behind them, this could actually be quite a bit of a problematic approach here, because it does seem like Fate, they're trying to figure out who they're going to take the fight with, right? Are they going to focus over on towards Gunday? Are they going to look over towards 77 or 777 rather? You know, which angle are they going to try and cover? And I mean, Scarf, they're doing a good job finding a little bit of that bait and switch, but we also see in the feed that up in Goroka, things are also starting to amp up, right? TTR still trying to kind of just survive the push that is being directed towards them.
We're seeing a couple of these rosters kind of get individuals caught out of position, and it's the main way of playing here on Vikendi, trying to spread out a little bit more than you would otherwise. In most of these games, you'll see that happen, but as we take a look at the map, as stage 1 is closing just a wee bit more, you'll see how impactful this is. A lot of teams will have 1 or 2 players kind of straggle away from the rest of the roster. That was the case for the Spartans until just a second ago. The Villains are doing the same. Rich Warriors, same case. But not everybody is going to play at least as successful as some of their counterparts.
Well, let's see how far that success is going to take them as we do say goodbye to Hansen. Hansen going out in 15th. So now we're down to the final 14. As you can see, the players here from Fanshawe are going to be looking to try and lock down a little bit more of that southern approach just to the north of Villanova. You see Scout OP doing as their name suggests, trying to get a little bit of that scouting going there. Currently, Castle is opened. I don't quite see anybody really looking to rotate up in towards that, but Center Zone again is going to be applying quite a bit of pressure as the Blue Zone is going through its final stretch. You got about 30 seconds and a little bit more to go. Where will the zone be taking them? Does seem like well, the Villains are a little bit hesitant, not going to be full sending it up to blindly. I think they want to see where the zone is going to be shifting up towards, right? That will help in determine what their next trajectory or next approach is going to be. But as we can see up on the map, we do have a few more hits starting to find their way across the way row. The shots starting to pop in one after the other. The zone does take a nice little comfortable shift, moving a little bit further north. But that is not going to have too much of an impact as to how these teams are going to be looking to play through right here. Fate keeping it nice and quiet. They're not going to be moving all too much. Currently positioned smack dab center zone. Gunday, though, you see a little bit of mobility coming through as they start to find their angle coming in on that eastern side. But there we have it. As you can see, not an insane shift. But we do have a lot more of that mobility coming through as the teams are going to try and get themselves closer to what I would expect, maybe Mount Kresnik, maybe up in towards Villa, just to try and kind of round out that zonal positioning here.
Yeah, my favorite thing about seeing this map perspective game over game is how different teams are changing their decisions early in these zone pools. For instance, look at Sign to God right now. Remember in our previous game, they were on top Everest and they dropped to an early good compound. They picked up a 2nd or 3rd place finish because of that. Back in game number 1, they were the latest rotators and they mostly got caught out because of it. But these rotations aren't helping South Carolina, at least not all that much. Chota, who was 1v3 in the previous game, he'll actually die very early this time around. And South Carolina upstate, after a massive winner chicken dinner and a 7-kill victory, go down in 14th place with only 2 points, if any, out of Vikendi. What a change once more, as Western University, the team that at the beginning of this game was in 12th place with 5 points total, takes them out in a full team fight.
It's crazy how angles and all these positions, keep on changing. But I think that is the beauty of these battle royales. You could look and set statistics all you want. It is still going to come down to how the teams play that particular match, right? And it's ever changing, and I love that that level of unpredictability that comes through off of that as well. Speaking of which, though, the next unpredictable part is going to be where stage 3 is going to be taking us, and of course we'll find out in about 40 seconds or so. For the time being, it does seem like the lobby are just going to be trying to keep themselves safe, trying to keep themselves quiet. They don't want to give up too much of a position just yet. I say that, and then of course, well, there's always that one team in the background that is a little bit more mobile than the team surrounding them.
And also looking at most of these teams, everybody is actively inside this current white zone. So nobody's rotating right now. Nobody needs to be moving right now. The only 2 or 3 teams that I'd say will more than likely have to move are Arctic Talon, Liquid, and BTX. Everybody else seems to be in most of the playable position. And I'd say that, I mean, maybe Villains or Rich Warriors would have to rotate north, but that's only if it's a significant pull in that direction. In just a few seconds, we'll more than likely take a look at the map. But before that happens, I'll tell you where the white zone pulls. It is just north of those villains around, I think that's Todosto. Most of the words. I apologize.
Yeah, I mean, the zone just kind of sends it up on itself, really, right? With a slight lean towards the north. Nothing too drastic, nothing too crazy. So I think for the teams themselves, this is nice because they can now really kind of, fulfill the positioning that they've got, really get into that angle and try and defend it. Some of them are going to get a little bit restless, as you can see being pretty evident on screen right here. Right, you've got the players there from Frostbite, feeling very much in their zone, right? Their comfort zone right here as they start to mobilize, start to try and expand and explore the area. And, well, it could work out quite beneficially, or maybe it could come back to bite them.
Povar, I was thinking of, by the way. That's so my bad. I was confusing that with Podvasto for some reason. Don't mind me. It's a lesser of a long day than it was 2 weeks ago, yet with how long some of these fights are drawing out, it feels like it's getting to that point. The villains mostly have rotated north, so they don't even have to move all that much. It is just Arctic Talon to their south. You see one of those members in the far south side of that mini-map, and they're actually moving in to the Rich Warriors. Jaga caught out and will go down. Sting is actually getting involved in this as well. There are 4 separate rosters, all maybe within 200 or 300 meters of one another, that could very well get into a multi-team fight if this drags on long enough.
Let's see where that is going to be going, and whether that is going to be playing out here. Ultron, interesting position though. I mean, I'm hoping that the villains could maybe find a way to squeeze through. The most obvious play is going to be towards Tuvar. That makes the most positional sense at this point. Yeah. But of course, they don't have the info that we have, right? They can't see the map like we can see the map, so. It's going to be an interesting one to see how they're going to look to play this one out. It does seem like Ultron is going to try and maybe dip over the bridge down through the blue, which makes a whole lot of no real sense here. So, yeah, I think Ultron is going to look to abandon that approach. Meanwhile, it's going to be up to the players from Western, though, that are going to be looking to play the angles here, right? They are slowly taking that approach, starting to push a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further. So much so that they've actually almost made it all the way up on towards center zone.
So I was talking about those 4 teams. You can really add Ecstasy to that conversation as well. It's Ecstasy, Sting, Rich Warriors, Villains, and Arctic Talon. But the one thing about Arctic Talon, you can't see this on the map, but they are moving from that southern position inside the blue to a further southwestern position outside of it. They are going for a full rotation away from the 4 teams that are between them and most of the playable zone. They're moving towards BTX and Liquid on the west side of the playable zone. I like that decision, understanding where most of the players already sit. I mean, of the 48 remaining individual players and 13 teams, the players in front of them account for nearly a quarter of both of those numbers. There's no real reason to jump into them if you can avoid it.
Yeah, I think this is where you got to take very calculated fights, right? You don't want to risk it unnecessarily. So even looking at a team like, Rich that we have right here, they're also not going to be looking to make any unnecessary moves as they do. Just quickly going to sneak their way on up, playing a little bit of that leapfrog. But it is going to be Ecstasy, though. That is one of the teams applying the pressure down onto the side here of the Rich Warriors. Over on towards Castle, nobody is occupying that space. But the villains are going to come rushing on forward. Sting, though, quick on the reaction here. As you can see, Nexus quickly picking up Ultron. And I think this is part of the issue here, right? Because I think villains, they were delaying too much on getting that rotation locked in, right? They've expended quite a bit of time, quite a bit of the opportunity trying to figure out what way, or which way rather, they want to try and get themselves up in towards the next zone.
And I'm going to keep covering the rotation of Centennial College. The Colts are moving further north than they were beforehand. Howard has been a little bit of a scouter. He's out on his own. It's only 3 players for Arctic Talon. They've had 1 player go scouting around the west side of BTX, that highway that goes up towards Mount Kresnik. And he's taken the north side of Mount Kresnik, north of Liquid and 777 from Georgian College. So there's more of a rotation. I think Arctic Talon has covered a near 3 kilometers, or at least half of their team has, in the last 2 minutes, just because they want to rotate so far away from most of the players as of right now. They still have 2 players so far, nearly 300 or 400 meters outside the blue zone, just because they don't want to get involved in fights that they can avoid as much as they can early. And it's working for them.
Yeah, but see, this is then where the problem, where the tough part comes in. Not necessarily the problem, but just the tough part is the damage of the blue is really starting to ramp up. Yeah. So they can't afford to spend too much time out there, right? At some point, they're going to have to take the plunge and just push and try and get themselves established. Speaking of which, though, look at this. Up on towards the north is going to be 777 now, just laying into the side here of Liquid. Scar getting spotted up top. Beautiful connections being made here by Lost. And that is turning into quite a bit of devastation here at the expense of 777. But this also then opens up the opportunity now for Arctic, right? Arctic Talons just towards the north of this. Yeah. They could definitely look to swoop in and, well, steal a little bit of the show here.
They may be able to steal more than just that. Liquid is now between a rock and 2 hard places. And there is the finish of Santu, who gets dropped from Arctic Talon. Again, this is a 3 kilometers south to north outside the blue zone rotation from Gats and company. All 4 players have made this full rotation, and they still have a fair amount of healing available to them if they need it. Karangi gets caught out, maybe not the greatest of position for that individual. But at the same time, Sign to God is further south of that Liquid roster. So 777 gets a bailout by Arctic Talon, but Sign to God gets the bailout by 777, and then 777 throws away their own bailout by going out in the open and getting caught by Gats. This is a very awkward stage 5 close, and we still have 13 teams remaining at this point here, DK.
I mean, you gotta commend the big strategy being played here by Centennial, right? You were talking about their rotation coming through. So far, things are looking quite beneficial here for them. They've been able to secure those points, right? Only 2 points up, but they do have I would say a somewhat superior positioning, right, with regards to the elevation they have to the teams down towards the southern edge here. But now the pressure is not going to stop anytime soon. It's going to be BCIT also trying to bring in their own little bit of a contribution. As you can see, Savage now just looking to poke and prod into the side of Scar. It is Scar on Scar action, right? Team Scar versus player Scar. And, well, Scar wins as Scar took Scar down. So there we go. Right,
well, if you at home were confused,
Scarless, I don't know. You know which way. We are going to be hopping it right back into, as you can see, Quantum Polytechnic, aka Fate, also still vying for a bit of a position as the zone now throws quite a bit of a spanner in the works, moving all the way down south, so far south that you cannot see the zone on the current minimap.
They're 300, 250 meters away from it. The only team that's actively inside the white zone, some of Villains, Sting just rotated in, and Fate is in there. But BTX, Sting, Arctic Talon, Liquid, and Scar, who took Arctic Talon's, who took Liquid's position in this compound, still have to traverse south. And look at where Sting are. Sting are basically just playing gatekeepers. This is like bridge camping on Erangel, and it's working. Cocket Lamb goes down very early in comparison to what we kind of expected from them. I mean, they didn't have the greatest of game 2s, but they're sitting at 10 points before this game. They're probably only at 11 or 12.
Scar has a player go down. Still, Arctic Talon being a complete nuisance to everybody, it seems. And again, they still have to rotate 200+ meters south, and they're pushing the effort.
I mean, this is yeah, this is quite a bit of an upset that the zone has brought in here. Let's see whether or not BCIT can actually maybe hold off a bit of a push. They have to do it really quick fast because, well, up comes the zone. It's going to be that full-on rush. The first play has been made. Hound has been found. Hound is out of here. Now, it's going to be BCIT trying to rush on forward. Now, unfortunately, getting picked up by Ding as Liquid steals a few of the eliminations here. But Gats now in such an uncomfortable position. We're talking about the blue zone damage. Look at this, just eating them alive as they come in with a bit of a stumble, bit of a fall, bit of a roll, and back to the lobby as Ding locks it in. Kona Stoga up to 8 eliminations on the board. Phenomenal play. And now, of course, Western find themselves in, I think, a beautiful setup here, right? I mean, they might be all the way on the far southern side of zone, but looking at the size of the zone and the positioning that they have to work with here, this could also be quite the beneficial setup. Meanwhile, up north, oh, it is not going to be an easy play.
No, not by any means. St. Clair will go out. Sign to God gets absolutely wiped by Fate, despite the fact they had a fair few of those early downs. But the big factor of those couple of fights is Ding, who was an isolated individual of Liquid, and yet is still able to pick up an extra 3 or 4 kills. Yeah, no placement points, but instead of having 4 kills out of this game, they finish with 8. And will have a very good finish to this game, despite the fact they lost a fair few members early. BCIT goes out fairly quickly as well. We're into placement points, but Sting is between a rock and a hard place of their own. I think they're down to 1 individual member and still in between 3 or 4 teams. Seems like BTX wants to go force the issue, and they're going to have some space to do so. 1 player already retrieved, but as soon as that happens, look at the jump in here from Brar. Everybody isolated inside the very small hut, and a Molotov will land. Volcano's going to be burned alive, as ironic as that may be, and BTX gets the finish.
Yeah, well played onto St. Lawrence, now up onto 5 eliminations. But there's still quite a bit of hard work left to be done here as the zone now all the way over towards the eastern side, right? So now they're going to slightly kind of retrace their steps. And Fate, they seem to be the team that is going to be quite comfortably now looking to establish themselves. And of course, they got a bit of gatekeepers right just ahead of them. It is going to be none other than the players here from Ecstasy, who we have towards that southern side. Fate now just capitalizing, hitting the double-digit eliminations. Yeah. As you can see, Novus looking actually quite comfortable here. RQ and the rest of the crew now starting to move on up, and this is going to be a big positional engagement here. As you can see, Ecstasy also now vying for that center zone. We got 1 getting taken on down, so 1 down, 2 more to go.
So there's 3 of Ecstasy, 3 of Fate, with 4 members of BTX, despite the fact that BTX has objectively worse positioning than both of those 2 previously mentioned rosters. They're in a pretty decent position because of their members alive. I say that as Punjab goes down, courtesy of Ultron, who ironically dies to the play zone, getting caught out of position. They'll go down outside the play zone, and Dr. Doom is left on an island. Ecstasy drops 1 member, make it 2 to the nade of Dr. Doom, and he's going to try and go finish these as an individual member. Ecstasy's down to 1 alive player, and if they go down, it's basically a gifted game to either BTX or Fate. A thrown-in nade, courtesy of Fate, will end up finishing off Ecstasy, but it was actually the Molotov of Dr. Doom that does so, and Fate gave away their position, so BTX takes full advantage, and they have an advantage of their own.
I mean, but it's not over just yet, right? Fate now just beautifully positioned up in towards zone. They've gone from 3 down to potentially 2. Yeah, it is now confirmed 2. And Dr. Doom could actually still have quite a bit of an impactful play. As you can see, is it Judd cooking up the utilities alongside their teammate here. There goes the follow through. So that is going to be Fanshaw out of here, down to the final 2. Fate versus BTX. St. Lawrence versus Quantum Polytechnic. This is going to be a numbers game here as we've got 2 players coming through for the side of Fate. St. Lawrence, though, they are still going to be rocking that full squad. who will be the one to lock it in? I mean, it does seem like Fate finds themselves in quite a bit of predicament. RQ9 could maybe clean it up. Oh, beautiful headshot. One down. You got to watch out for Vira. We're going to check these angles. Oh, look at that. Look at that. RQ9 just picking it up like it's no one's business. Oh, it's going to come down to the wire. Quick little bit of a strafe. There we have it. Signed, sealed, delivered. It is going to be St. Lawrence securing themselves the victory. BTX. What a way to go.
With a winner chicken dinner, but almost giving that one away. RQ9, great first shot, understanding the priority of fights with how many players were swarming him. Take the one on the high ground that has a good side angle. That's the first. Then the far player that has an even better off angle. That's the second. Almost picks up a third with a 1-2 around the tree with the shotgun, but can't end up finding the finish on him. If he gets that kill, it's a 1v1 to decide the game. But because he doesn't, not only does he lose the winner chicken dinner, but those two players that he downed don't get credited as kill points. So Quantland Polytechnic, amazing game as a team, even better to finish in second place, but it just came down to the manpower that was the difference. With how many nades were thrown in from so far away, they play high ground, low ground, and they just basically start swarming that Fate squad, and there's not much you can do in a 2v4 like that.
I mean, still a very, very impressive performance, irrespective of how it panned out. Let's take a look and see who our MVP will be for the final match here. Of course, it goes right over to Ding Ding as they secure themselves the award. 5 eliminations and 548 damage secured. No surprise, really, because, I mean, we've seen Ding Ding also in the semis, also play quite a few aggressive matches, so it's good to see Ding Ding really coming into that position yet again. Unfortunately for Liquid, though, they didn't quite make it up into those very late stages with regards to, you know, well, the survivability in this one. But still, I mean, impressive nonetheless.
Yeah, they pick up, as a team, Liquid had most of those kills come from Ding Ding. They had 8 as a team. That was better than the 5th, 4th, and 3rd place rosters, despite the fact they finished in like 7th or 8th. So credit where credit is due there for Ding Ding. We'll take a look at our most valuable team. I believe it is Quantland Polytechnic, solely because of their eliminations. They finished with 11 elims. RQ9 had 4 of them, almost had 6 or 7 if you count those final few. But this MVT, as we find the determination, is indeed Quantland Polytechnic. Nervous had 3 elims. Shaw 77K had 3 as well. Hustle's the only one that did not get on the board. That number should be 11. At least that's what our final graphic said. But well over 2,000 damage for the team. That is a big pickup for Quantland Polytechnic.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it's 4 plus 6, it does come down to 11 for this.
Can I not count?
So, yeah, it's okay, right? It's almost 2025, so that's where the extra 1 came from. I would assume.
That's what I'm gonna go with.
Yeah,
wow,
that's the explanation, right? That's only what it's been. But yeah, I mean, very, very impressive performance coming through here from Fate, aka Quantland Polytechnic. But of course, now we got to add everything together to see what the board is going to be like for the end of day number 1. Right, 3 matches down, and the leaderboard brings us in where we find ourselves with St. Lawrence coming in with quite a bit of a clawback, right? They started in 7th place coming into this match. Now they find themselves in a glorious pole position, right? They had, what, 13 total points? Now they've got 33, so that is a 20-point boost coming in just in this game. Absolutely phenomenal. It, of course, makes sense, right? Winner, chicken dinner, and the 10 eliminations they had to follow up with that. So very, very impressive stuff coming through on their end. But, of course, it doesn't stop there, right? As you can see, Fanshaw, BCIT still keeping that consistency going. Stoga also kind of staying exactly where they were. But then there's a little bit of a switch, right? South Carolina, they weren't first. Now they've been moved all the way to 5th.
Yeah. So think about how big that fight from chat earlier is. I mean, they're at 26 right now. They could be at 14, and they had 0 points in that game. It would be a difference between 5th and 10th, or 5th and 9th, depending on how you want to look at it. That is how some individuals can come in. BCIT, they have just 4 points from that game. Conestoga had a very respectable 8. But I mean, Fanshawe with 11, St. Lawrence with 20, Kwantlen Polytechnic with 16 of their own. Both Kwantlen and St. Lawrence had 10 eliminations each. Fanshawe and the Villains had 6. Western University had 6, and then University of Canada West, they had just 3, but they finished in 5th place. So not bad for them by any means, but could have been just a little bit better. I gotta say, Canada West was a team I was looking at, but because they took so many early fights, they lost one to Portage early. That was the 1 point you see from Portage right now. That's the reason they lose so much later. They rely a lot on their team play, and they just didn't have it. I think they had just Sook, who was left alone, 1v4, v3, v2, v2, or something like that with 5 teams left. He got wiped by fate. There was not much he could do.
I mean, it's tough, right? It is tough. You got to do what you can do. So, yeah, I think still an interesting turn of events coming through for the first day. At least the top 8 teams all sitting with 20+ points. So that does set the bar quite high. But as we know, it's going to put quite a bit of pressure on the teams on that right-hand side, right? I mean, both teams from Seneca, we want to see, a good improvement coming through from their end. Portage as well as Hansen, surprisingly... tough day for them, right? Each just picking up 1 point either side, and I don't know. It's not what I was expecting to see. I was hoping to see them, secure a little bit of a stronger performance overall. But I guess maybe let's just call it the day one nerves, right? Day one nerves coming in here, doing what it does, and hopefully they'll be able to find a little bit more of that momentum. Because I mean, if we look at Portage. Right, in the semis, they walked away with 15 points, right? So 1 point on the board, I'm not quite sold. I'm not quite sold. I want to see more. We've seen them get more points. I believe they can. Now they should just do it.
The problem they ran into today... the problem they ran into today was only having 3 players, and they took a lot of early fights. That was the problem. If you're playing with 3 players, you have to wait till late game, or you have to become third parties. You can't get involved as early because there's a lot more variability. In this case, ended up costing you a lot of points. They picked up 1 kill. That's it, and it was against Gunday in the castle as a early stage fight in Vikendi. So they get a kill, but that's it.
But then, so then what's your reasoning behind Hansen? Because Hansen got 28 points. And they ended with
well only, they had the day one nerves.
Okay, all right. So Hansen, day one nerves. We'll let that one slide. But tomorrow, I want to see Hansen. I want to see Portage. I want to see them step it up, right? Because they've shown that they can lock in the points. Now we want to see it, right? The nerves. There's no more excuse for that.
Yeah,
right?
We saw a lot of individuals today.
Just go. I don't know. Rub your ears or have a nice warm cup of coffee or something to relax. Hot cocoa, that works as well, right?
Yeah.
Just chill and then get it.
So winner chicken dinners out of day one. BCIT picks up one, South Carolina Upstate one of their own, and St. Lawrence gets a win just the same. Final thoughts out of day number 1 here, Mr. DK.
Oh, Mister, you called me. All right. All right. Well, most of the teams that I was expecting or hoping they would step it up on day 1, half of them did. The other half, they are holding back a little bit, right? And I mean, I know they're doing it for dramatic effect. That's the only reason, right? That's why we have the teams on the right-hand side sitting with the points that they have. It's for dramatical effect. And I'm all game for the show. So tomorrow, I want to see those teams really step it up, let everything out of the bag, just, rip it up. And we are going to be ending on Sanhok tomorrow, so there's no excuse, right? I want to see the teams really going to town. And of course, what better way than ending all of this on Sanhok?
Yeah, Sanhok's the close. It'll be the only time we see it between the semifinals and the grand finals, but this is still basically anybody's grand finals. St. Lawrence finished game 3 with 20 points. That 20-point margin, if you have 2 of those games, even 1.5 of those games, you put yourself right back into the top 3, top 4. The money covers the top 6, and completion to get into PMSL qualifiers covers the top 2. And obviously, you want to have a victory for $6,000. We will crown all of those positions in day number 2. But we've still got about 24 hours between now and then. Don't forget there's a time change in the United States. If you do not have your clocks changed at about 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. tomorrow morning, be here an hour later than you were today. But we hope to see you here regardless for our day 2 of Grand Finals. 3 more maps of PUBG Mobile here in our PUBG Mobile Campus Championships separate us from crowning champions when we come back in 24 hours.